Get your teacups, kids. It is time for Friday. Welcome in, everybody. Good to see you. Don't mind me and my my lovely neck embrace here. I've started working out again, and I'm having old man problems. I hurt my neck with the shoulder press, so got a little heat pad on this morning for a little extra maneuverability. How y'all doing, though? Good to see you this lovely Friday. Thank you for joining me. As good a day as any to talk about Star Citizen, and you wouldn't believe it. Where'd this pen come from? Did this just get here? This is nice. Yes, yeah, but like I don't recognize this. I haven't seen this. This is very nice. I could hack the mainframe with this. So we're gonna talk about Star Citizen today. It's going to be good old time because first we're going to review some CitizenCon stuff here with me today. This is stuff that we watched, what, 3 weeks ago now? 2 weeks ago? I don't know. Feels like a long time ago now. But we watched some CitizenCon stuff about the next several planets, star systems, whatever you want, coming to Star Citizen, how they're going to make it. And it kind of was a bit of an advertisement for their engine, but it also was a way for us to see where they're going with, weather, with foliage, with fauna, with the ecosystem surrounding planets made in the game. So we're going to watch that and talk about it a little bit. And Star Citizen Live just started, I believe, about 15 minutes ago. So by the time that's done, we're going to go and we're going to watch that to sort of recap everything and get the blanks filled in on whatever it is they're answering right now live. So thank you, everybody, for joining in. All you lovely notification gang. Did you miss something? Who injured me? The gym. Shoulder press injured me. It's the Nerf gun. It's because I've been getting shot so much. It's all your guys' fault. Thank you. Twitch. Love to see you jumping in and dancing. Getting us started off real nice and bright. Thanks, guys. For spamming all your moving emotes. Brigadier, AAK, Valis. Good to see you all. Zero, Maverick, Walla Walla, Brigadier. I said Brigadier twice. Spore, PK. Welcome in, guys. Echo. No comments on your commentary, man. You just have a good time. You do you. Mrs. Tomato. Good to see you here. And Baltimore. Hello to the UK. Juke Sky Squawka. What's up, Prototype? How you doing? Skim milk is just fat water. Change my mind. Echo, are you okay? Made Mrs. Tomato spit out her breakfast. You think 4.0 will see a permanent player count increase, maybe 500 plus? Yes, and I don't know. I think we'll definitely see a player count increase. Don't know how big it'll be, though. Either way, let's not waste any time. We are good people. Got my neck injury from the gym, ready to go. Chat is with me, and you guys are, as always, great company. We've got some CitizenCon stuff to get over before we get to Star Citizen Live. Like I said, we're going to go ahead and review what was said at this last CitizenCon about the future of planet tech and Genesis and dynamic weather, points of interest, all that stuff. I'm going to skip around this a little bit because there's some parts that I think are... Not that I don't, like what they're saying, but we gotta keep going because I also got people. There are people coming here for the HVAC system later today, and I gotta make sure we're not, still live when that happens. So this one might be a little bit more rushed, but I just want to make sure we get time for Star Citizen Live later. So let's jump in. There's no sound.
A lovely atmosphere.
There we go.
And our cloud rendering, which can provide some spectacular views. We have our on-the-fly terrain generation, which is no loading screens in our game, which we're very proud of. And then we have our scattering system that can populate these planets with many different diverse biomes. And we've been setting quality benchmarks for each of these biomes as we come across them one by one.
But what we have isn't perfect. This scene on Microtech, it looks great, but it's not getting the same density that you'd expect from a real pine forest. That's one of the things we want to solve. The other, if I take you to the other side of Microtech,
Yeah, that looks
you'd
very
be
Star
excused
Citizen.
if you thought we'd just turned around and looked at a different part of the forest. Why is that?
Don't touch
Well,
the
this is because
GoXLR.
currently our artists create slices of biomes in great number, and then they distribute them across the planet using humidity and temperature properties. Each slice looks great in isolation, as you've seen, as you've explored. But this is not the solution to give us varied and natural biomes across an entire planet. Additionally, just using humidity and temperature limits us to only 2 degrees of variation. And that's not enough for the sorts of planets and worlds that we want to create and for you to explore.
So how are we going to scale up our planet generation?
Tell me.
Well, as I said before, we're going to start with physically based rules that drive everything. We want nothing to feel random on these planets. And we want no limitations on the number of biomes. We want infinite biomes that are continuously changing across the planets. And we want extreme density, and we want to maintain or exceed all of the quality levels we've set with our existing biomes. And most importantly...
All right, we're going to jump forward to the actual video part.
Ship at a quantum marker miles away, and everywhere in between. There are no loading screens, you see everything. We cannot afford for it to look bad in any other scenarios. So, let's start from a ground perspective. Demo number 1, let's have a look.
Hey, B5. Yeah, this looks way better. You guys remember that video we got, or that picture we got a long time ago? Maybe like, I think it was like a monthly report. Monthly report Microtech improvements. It's like the first times we were seeing this sort of new forests at Microtech. Man, it's not going to be here. Okay, I got a better idea. Go back to, what was the name of that Around the Verse episode? Actually, I bet you we could find it if we look for the word alpine. Got a new keyboard. It's so nice to type on. And it's quieter. Have you guys noticed that? I'm not blowing everybody's ears out, just trying to search for things. Okay, this is not showing me. All right, we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. We're just going to scroll back through all of their videos and hope I can find the thumbnail. But there is a shot. There's like a really early shot of this kind of biome I'd love for you guys to see. It's like the first times they were trying to do this sort of alpine forest sort of biome, and it's it was towards the beginning of 2020, I think. A little bit earlier, maybe 2019. Yeah, it would have been before we saw Microtech, so it must have been beginning of 2019 or 2018. Here we go. It's when it was still around the verse. It's coming up. It's coming up. There it is.
Organic ones that you sort of see.
So here's the first kind of version of this biome.
All right, so carrying on our tour, we're leaving ArcCorp now. We are going a little further in the timeline of our development of next year in Star Citizen. But here is Microtech.
Yeah, I've watched The Creator. Love that movie.
A biome that the art team's working on. So we're doing exploration on Microtech. So it is the coldest of planets in the Stanton system. There's, so we have a Microtech, ArcCorp, Crusader, and Hurston. But Microtech had a terraforming accident, so it's a little colder than the other ones, but it's not completely covered in snow and ice. So we're also looking at...
It's like as basic as it gets.
Sort of like Nordic forest land.
But we were so excited to see this back then. Because before this, all we had was Hurston, really. When it came to planetary surface, we had Hurston, its moons, ArcCorp, its moons, Crusader's moons. We didn't have Crusader yet. So this was like our first real Earth-like kind of situation. Hurston has some places like that, but this felt different. And it was like, this was like, holy crap, this is an awesome biome. Can't wait to see this. And now look at it. They've done a lot of work on Planetech. The density's crazy. They're gonna have to let me turn my base into a treehouse. Like, I don't really care about your pre-made fabricated bases, whatever. Let me build my shack in the trees and implement trees into strategic points of defense in my house.
How do we make that?
Because that's what I want.
Thank you, thank you. So, let's talk about first what's underneath it all. The ground! So, so, in our
He had so much fun with that one line.
So, in our previous terrain shader, we just switched between different ground textures depending on climate and didn't really consider the unique properties of each type. Now, the terrain shader is based around 4 layers. We always first consider bedrock at the bottom of it all. Then, where appropriate, we add layers of soil of different types. We then add debris where appropriate, whether it be pine needles, dead leaves, etc. And then when it gets cold, we add snow. Each of these layers has unique shading properties and unique...
Dude, this is freaking wild. They're doing soil, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Hellnuss said in chat, I feel like ISC now only shows they have already shown or we somehow know about. Between the ISC pauses, event ISCs, and boring ISCs, we get diluted new infos. I miss sprint reports. I agree. Inside Star Citizen changed multiple times throughout its lifetime, but it specifically has taken a different kind of approach over this last year of being more of a preview than a look into the development. So instead of seeing development at all parts of development, like peeks into different, white box here, a little bit of back-end stuff over here, it's mostly just a preview of whatever features are coming in the next update, which, I still enjoy. I like seeing that, and I appreciate the deeper dives into the stuff that's coming in, but it feels a little more commercialized, I guess, than Around the Verse used to be, and it's tightened up for sure, which I do appreciate. It's tightened up, and it feels like it is better scheduled out and a little better paced. But it definitely feels a little bit more like an advertisement for the upcoming patch rather than a look at the development of the game overall. For that kind of development, you now have to go to monthly reports, and that's okay. It's their purview to change what they want to their weekly shows to be. Just, something to have noticed over time. You like the ground you can walk on, run on, sleep on, do a lot of other fun things on it. Additionally, most SCLs are just small additions to ISC or CitCon panels. That's good though. I was honestly, these Star Citizen lives that follow up the CitizenCon panels, I enjoy that. Because the Star Citizen panels bring up questions too, and a lot of times those questions get answered. I think Star Citizen Live has actually become more interesting over time, while ISC has become less interesting. Because Star Citizen Live does less... They do less of their game dev sessions and more of their Q&As, if I'm not mistaken. I might be mistaken. I think over the summer times when it's quieter, it's not as interesting, but... I don't know, I've been liking it.
Positions between them. Because we do this all in one shader, we're able to achieve that as well as being performant. We can also use things like water saturation to darken and tint the soil and other properties to make it look more realistic. But that's not what filled most of the screen in that demo. That's the vegetation. Like what Ali said, we want to emulate the laws of nature. So in Genesis, we have rule sets for every asset that tells it how to respond to our rich data, whether it be soil type, water availability, temperature, geology, or whatever.
Good call on the C1, Sid.
The viability and the vitality of each asset, then compare them to decide what is likely to spawn in a natural environment. This automatically creates the cohesive environments that you saw in that clip. Not handcrafted anymore. No one has told those ferns and those pines to be like that. They each want to be like that. And that's what we're doing, multiple assets coming together to create a unique microbiome. What about trees then? Same thing. They have a larger requirement for space. They have a larger requirement for nutrients. That's how you see the distribution, and it's how it all works. Let's meet
Gosh,
Flora
dang
came
it.
together to...
It's pretty freaking nuts. They're going to get into detail here about these microbiomes, but it's crazy how detailed this system is getting when the original goal was just to build out planets. Some interesting planets. Matt Sully, man, it's good to see you. Thank you for dropping by. I think you were part of the group the other day that was asking about merch. Whole store has been restocked. If you guys were looking to grab the socks, or if you wanted to get a hoodie or anything else to keep yourself warm this winter, and also to support us, you can check out our merch store. Everything's been restocked. New fabrics have been made. Get it hot off the press, especially the socks. They had no excuse. But thanks for being here, Matt. I think the older, more in-depth ISCs and ATV format was taking too much of a toll on the developer time. I agree. I think so too. They actually used to do their monthly reports inside around the verse. That's part of why they split it out and started doing text-based monthly reports only, because that's just a lot. And yeah, it took too much time. It's good that they got it dedicated to a single person driven show.
Beat that forest, to make that forest, and have a look at some of their properties. Now, just to note, they are all going to look quite similar because we've already seen them in the same place, so they must be similar. So, building blocks, like grass and common grass.
Like really? Sunlight?
We had ferns, see it's a much lower requirement for sunlight. We had salix bushes forming our undergrowth. And we had pines, of course, and multiple variations of pines.
Sunlight? Like they're feeling out humidity, sunlight, whether the thing is on a freaking slope on the side of a hill. There's so many things that they're putting into the way that this technology works. And then on top of all of that, they're doing they're about to talk about it here. Competition between fauna. What? I mean flora. Crazier.
Diversity is driven by competition. Everything has ideal conditions, which affects its competitiveness. We also have additional control over this in the form of dominance, which allows us to make one asset more competitive and more dominant than another, which is just what we see in nature. Everything is constantly fighting for resources and, of course, light. Because we spawn these assets in a hierarchy, it's easy to propagate shade data down over the distribution of the assets so that we can control ones that prefer or reject shade.
So you're going to start to have plants show up in certain areas because those areas have a certain... That's incredibly valuable for exploration, in my opinion. Let's say you have planets where you can have very rare plants that create something, through crafting that it's incredibly hard to make. People do this in games all the time. Like there are plenty of games out there that have just legendary items that are super hard to craft. Let's say you have to find a plant that only grows in a very cold place that stays humid, sees rain, and is shade most of the time. And that's like some random far off planet. The fact that it grows there isn't something that they had to go and like place out there to make it super rare. It just becomes a thing there. I hope. I think that's the possibility this gives, is that things will grow based on conditions rather than based on the artist going in and saying that they're going to grow there. And I feel like that's pretty powerful for players being able to further understand or further benefit from their knowledge of the game. Like if you're somebody who does collect that kind of stuff and maybe sells it on a market, you know exactly where you need to go to get that stuff because you just know where it's supposed to grow, as opposed to knowing, oh, this is where the devs posted this up this quarter. This is where they made it spawn in the game. Seems really powerful to me. I hope that it does become a thing through that. Like, I hope it manifests itself that way. Seems to be the way they're setting it up, though.
Often, like these ferns, they can spawn in light, but they are outcompeted in those scenarios most of the time. So you will see a rogue fern, or a place where there's no seeds for a specific asset, you might start to get this coming in.
Think we'll chop down wood? Maybe for base building. I think maybe that wouldn't be enough power for the base building they're doing here, but never know. They showed chop down trees during the base building panel. So the rocks are really interesting here. Specifically that they are clearly grouped in this area. Like if you back up, when you're coming down here, you can tell that there's still some rocks up here, but like they're not as all over the place, and they mentioned that later that it's based on where this is in relation to the rest of the mountain. So maybe that does actually mean that with rocks spawning procedurally on a base of rule sets, that valleys will have a lot less rocks in them. So I think it would make everybody happy. It's also kind of, that could be another one of those things that's like everyone wanted them to fix the way that rocks were scattered across this game for like 5-6 years now. And they never did. And maybe it's because they always knew that Planet Tech at some point was going to take care of it for them. They just didn't want to do the fix twice. Probably never know. Yeah, it's a good song.
So to take you through some of the things we saw in that clip, let's talk about rocks first. So anyone that's done a lot of ground driving and ground vehicles might have seen that our rocks sometimes feel a little bit randomly scattered, and it can be quite an obstacle sometimes. So in this clip, you saw that the rocks are no longer randomly scattered, and they're now placed based on physically based rule sets. And this logical grouping is achieved via erosion simulations, which we run offline to build localized data maps. And they describe the size of the aggregate and rocks and the density and where they should naturally form. And that means we get things like these natural clusters of boulders at the forest edge underneath the cliffside.
Keep them there. Please keep all the rocks right there, right under that cliffside. Oh, man. Just like, that's one of the things that always stands out to me in like the sci-fi movies and stuff. The fast-moving, low-sitting hovercrafts just skating over the ground and not slamming into a bunch of boulders sitting there randomly. Like, I want to go pod racing, CIG. Come on.
Notice that the cliffs have been dramatically improved in how they shade. We also see things like the natural clumping of vegetation.
Also, that reminds me. Do you guys think, knowing CIG and how much they like to play off of people's references and nostalgia for other sci-fi IPs, do you think they're going to create a hovercraft that performs kind of like a pod racer? Because I could see them doing that. I would not be surprised if they didn't try and give that a go. Especially with their rope tech.
Seed dispersal. This is controlled per species, so we can get better emulation of their unique growth patterns and create a much more realistic environment. And we also calculate the slope aspect, which is the exposure to vegetation to solar radiation and other environmental factors. And this allows us different species to flourish in different conditions, as we can see on different sides of this valley.
But again, this was one of the things that I thought I was an idiot for thinking when I was a kid. I was like, why don't games just set up rules and then make their games run off those rules so that players always know what's going to happen, and then you don't have to like code in everything separately to happen all the time in your games. I was like 12, so I didn't know that you can't really just do that, but that's one of the things I like about approaches like this, is like they're setting up the rules to see if it actually works. And will it work? I don't know. But it seems like they're trying to actually do that kind of thing. And other companies are too. CIG is not the only one. But I appreciate that kind of approach. Hey, we're going to set up plants to have seeds, and then we're going to set up planets to have winds, and then we're going to say, okay, seeds, go on the wind, and we'll see where they go. I hope it's something similar to that. I don't think the levitation, the hover bikes are the same as pod racing right now. I feel like you got to be real close to the ground to meet that definition. You want the trailer tech first? Mule with a trailer gives it a new purpose. A mule with a trailer.
And over larger scale, we calculate the age and vitality of each tree individually to drive exactly how high they should be, but also the color of their leaves. Now, this isn't the only thing that will drive the color of the leaves. We're going to introduce the concept of seasons to the game. This will mean our planets will evolve through the year, and we'll be able to shed leaves from trees and have the grass wither in winter.
All right, so this is like a pretty big reference that has only been mentioned quite rarely, I'll say. And I want to say it was mentioned at a CitizenCon. Which CitizenCon was it? Oh boy. Might have been this one. Seasons, though. Does that mean that the planets will orbit? Does it mean... it's this one. Does that mean the planets are going to orbit
for the clients to control how
the star? Or does it just mean that they're just going to... The planets will just naturally or artificially change seasons? There's a big difference there, you know?
on some sort of arc.
Here is the first time we heard about this
This might spawn something completely
in
different.
video format, though. As something they were
Also
getting ready to do.
Experiment with a new foliage shader that takes into account the health of the plant based on its surroundings again, and the current season of the planet. Though what you're seeing on the screen is far from final. In this,
What you were seeing on the screen is far from final. That was October 2021. Fart from final. 3 years later, and they're at least saying that it's going to be a thing for sure. I wonder how long it'll actually take to come to the game. But also, I'm really wondering, like, what else do you want to do with the idea of seasons in this? Every independent state machine has to be looped through every tick to determine its interactions. Oh, systemic game systems are always constrained by processing power. I see. Yeah, it makes sense that there is some across the board limit that has stopped that from happening in games. But I did wonder if it was that or if it was design practice. If there was some reason that people didn't really want to go that route when it came to games. And I'm glad to see that it is a possibility at some point. Orbits with quantum mechanics would be pretty crazy. Because imagine what it would mean for the economy if planets could orbit and eventually become... Like if one planet, the game starts and there are opposite sides of the star system. So you've got a whole bunch of ideas of how trade works between these two planets at that level. But what if they orbit and at some point they get right next to each other? So the quantum jump between them is 30 seconds instead of 6 minutes. Like at that point, the entire economy between these two planets is going to change. The way that missions run, the way that the crime is handled, the trade lanes between the two planets. There's so much that could change if there were actual orbits in the planets. Seems like that would just be freaking a lot to take account for.
So as you're starting to see, all these rules, all this data, it's all coming together to create what we call truly emergent biomes. Let's have one more look at how this varies over a much larger scale.
It is, the transitions between biomes really are beautiful. It's going to be really something to see when we can start decorating them with things like, I don't know, bases? Some pirate in chat is like, you mean my next target?
Just like in real life. Oh.
What's up, Fred? Toes gang.
Just like in real life, our areas should vary, even by traveling a few kilometers. If you get in a helicopter and fly over the Alps, it all looks a bit snowy, but when you look closer, it's constantly changing. And we're now able to accurately represent that with our changing data. Another very important factor to mention is the distant look. In this screenshot, you don't see a single tree, and yet the terrain is still green. We previously did that with artist-made lookup tables that told the planet what color to be at what position. But that wasn't going to work with all our new data and our far more complex spawning. Now we have a systemic solution. The planet shader is able to intelligently evaluate what's going to spawn there using the same rule sets that cause the assets to spawn there when you get there. That means we can sample the sort of color that is going to project onto the orbital view and use it. We get a far better accuracy from the result. Together, by creating rules and authoring data that works, we create a continuously varying planet that sets the scene for the incredible exploration gameplay I know you guys are going to have. But how have we done this without compromising on performance?
Sierra Falls.
They're always just skipping around the idea of exploration gameplay, but they never really dive into talking about it.
New data sets and these physically based spawning rules, you're probably wondering, how is this going to handle in your CPU? We don't want to melt anyone's CPU, so we've redesigned all of this tech to work much more efficiently than before, and now it can run on many cores. This allows it to be run perfectly well on both the CPU and the GPU. So we've redesigned our framework so that we can run it at both and swap between them freely. Now, the benefit of this is
maybe you should just make all your servers that have GPUs.
Things like, first off, move the terrain system to the GPU, and we've now done that to get some incredible performance improvements, but we then also cache the results in some what we call a virtual terrain texture. I'll give you a quick demo of this now. This is now vastly faster than the previous system, but it also allows us to generate the terrain.
All right, so I actually, okay, just saw it, never mind. The first couple times I watched this, I did not see the pop-in, but now I can see it.
Which means all the popping you can see on the mountains as we're approaching, all of that should be completely eliminated on the right-hand side of the screen.
No, I'm still not really seeing it much. There we go. There is a little bit of it.
With the extra headroom we've gained by making our terrain system more efficient, we've been able
Left side wasn't even that bad, in my opinion.
to introduce some improvements, including high-resolution ground textures, proper blending between surface types, and of course, better tiling. If you're familiar with any of our planets, we've taken off all the assets so you can see the issue. And now how it looks, you don't
This
see
I
those lines
definitely
going forward.
noticed. Holy crap. The tiling in these ground coverings is, it's pretty bad on some of these moons. The team who does Planet Tech doesn't update too often. Planet Tech V4, I think we got in 2020 or 2019. So it's due for an update.
GPU, like Ali said, we can perform the scattering there too, which is significantly faster. All those algorithms that we've used to generate those first bits can run there without being more expensive on your CPU. And it also means the results are directly there on the GPU. We can render straight from them.
This is more important than it seems because it's just a little bit of talk and a slide or two, but this is huge for optimizing the game. They need these planets to run better, especially as they add more of these outposts in there. Outposts already don't run well, so the better they can make the planets run, the better the rest of the game can run. And they're clearly putting a lot of content out there. I'm glad they're focusing on getting this running smoother.
That allows us to have dramatically more density in our new system. We can render objects directly without having to go via the CPU every frame. We also cull at different levels of granularity, with bigger groups in the distance and individual assets up close. Just as a demonstration, this is the sort of density you can expect on Microtech today. And in a second, we'll flip over to what you can expect from the new
Honestly, this looks pretty believable to me.
upcoming tech.
That's pretty nuts. No, I don't think they're really calling it Planet Tech V5 anymore. When you go into the bathroom or kitchen, the tile looks all messed up now. Dude, that's so many freaking trees.
In a second, we're going to turn on the culling groups debug so you can see. These are the groups that we create of those trees and of the terrain. And as we get closer, we shrink them so we're more intelligently rendering what we need without having
competitive
to
Flora
individually.
I don't know how far that or how noticeable that really is. Okay, so yeah, this is all Genesis stuff, but that was phase 1. phase 2, they get to talk a little bit more about what. So this is kind of like they're showing us originally what benefits they've brought to the Planet Tech system. What can they do better now? Things like more dense environments, scattering, more unique tracking of the features of the atmosphere in those planets. They're showing us the ways they can use their engine. So then they go from there to kind of say, okay, now we've shown you what we've unlocked with this engine. Here's what we can do with it. Star Citizen Live canceled? Not that I know of. I hope not. Planning on going over it after this. Hello, Luna Maria. Good to see you. Was just setting up sleepy time video, and here you are. Welcome in. You've got Planet Tech for today's episode. Give me the swamps. Dude, let's look at the swamps.
Of Genesis is all about emergent biomes. For our first example of today, it's almost a shame Will left because it's about moisture, but let's look at very high moisture and medium to high temperature.
Yeah, it should be live right now. See, clearly you couldn't do this with the previous Planet Tech stuff because this is way denser than anything. I mean, this might even be... They definitely have to be able to unlock ridiculous amount of density to even want to try and go with biomes like this. So I'm glad that they didn't just whip this out and try to show us that they were doing swamps and forests. I'm glad that they actually showed us that they have the tech, or at least have worked on the tech that they expect to be able to do this. Because if they just randomly came out and said, yeah, we're doing swamps, I'd immediately look at this and be like, look at how freaking dense this is. Can they actually pull that off? But they've talked about that already, so at least it's a little more believable. Yeah, their Planet Tech is a big standout in the industry. So you could easily make a bunch of harvestables that only spawn in swamp locations. I do wonder if they're going to give us easier tools to harvest, though, than just picking one by one. Because if they did, it could be a pretty decent way to make money. Find rare harvestables and then pick them at large on planets that most people don't go to. Sell them back in Stanton.
Thanks, that did look really good. So, for swamps, we obviously made vegetation that feels at home in or near water. But before we dive in, allow me to give you a quick primer on our approach to authoring plants. Most species can survive in a fairly wide range of climate conditions, but will only thrive if the conditions are ideal. To support this concept, we author our vegetation assets to describe the full growth cycle of a species. If the conditions aren't ideal, they may not grow to full maturity or look their best, but the species can still exist. So let's have a closer look. For the water's edge, we made plants like this alternative.
Talking about it like that, it just like makes it sound like the planet itself is developing on its own, which is one step removed from, I think, what everybody wants from MMOs in general, and that is the feeling of being in a place that is continuously developing and growing and changing without your input. Such a cool aspect of a game. I wish that more games would go over this kind of stuff in what they made, because I know that there are tons of really impressive details like this in a bunch of games, and we just never get to hear about them because they're locked behind NDAs and trademarks and IPs and all that stuff.
Arrow and the iris. We also need the aquatic ones to float on the water surface, like the water lily or the pickerel weed. This willow and the one after, a Chinese tallow tree, while comfortable near water, we can also use to replace some of the more aged assets used to seeing elsewhere in the game. The last one, it's taking a bit longer now, but the last one I'm gonna wait. The last one, you may not see used much in other biomes, but it's a very iconic one for the swamp, the bald cypress.
Fishies. GII.
So another feature we need for make a swamp experience a proper one is water interaction. Over the last year or two, a lot of work has gone into improving the way our water reacts and renders. So naturally, we wanted to make a biome that highlights those advances. Let's have a brief look at what it's like being inside the swamp. As you walk through or swim through the water, you may come across obstacles like
Human
rocks and
stew.
debris floating on the surface.
With
You will react to the player
a
character
side of
out
logs.
the way. We were also pleasantly surprised when we first saw how the water simulation systemically affects assets floating on the water surface, making for some really immersive moments.
They had to black it out there because he accidentally went too low, crashed into the swamp, everything blew up, game crashed. No underwater dungeons? Oh, come on, you don't want to give us our Star Wars Episode 1? Woo? What planet is that? Naboo? Give everybody their Naboo fantasies.
Now, before I get to our second use case of the day, a quick disclaimer. Obviously, all the things you're seeing here today we're still actively working on, but this one in particular, it's a bit early in the process. So let's have a look at extreme object density next. With the data saying we should have high rainfall and sunlight year-round, it's the perfect condition for our next biome to appear.
And it's also like, do these biomes actually appear? Somebody asked there, like, if you plant this kind of stuff on a planet it's not supposed to be on, if the conditions are right, will it grow? Will other parts of it grow? Like, how deep does this go in terms of, bless you, Mrs. Tomato. How deep does it go that, am I harvest mooning? Is this going to be space harvest moon, star harvest moon, starvest moon? Like, how much of this is going to be systemic, you know? Maybe I just want to play a farming sim. Like, how nuts would it be? I'm sorry, I keep pausing this. This is just like, there's so much possibility here. How crazy would it be if the jungle was a perfect place to farm something and you couldn't find other places to go do that? So instead of like trying to create a greenhouse at your base, you just took your spaceship over to a jungle planet, sat down in the middle of a jungle, and created a farming base right there in like some random jungle off in some star system. Because you just wanted to grow something that only grew there. That's f***ing sick. That bug is loud. Gotta think of the kids, bro. Bleep macro. You've made the plant sad. Don't be a sad tomato. How is this early stages? Nah, I think this is done up for the presentation. In what system would a biome be needed? This would probably be in Terra. On Gen. Gen is a very tropical planet.
Considering everything you've just seen is still very much work in progress, the gameplay capture team really did a great job showing our work in the best possible light. With jungles, we wanted to explore the concept of vertical stratification, as they are the prime example for that. What it means is that you have horizontal layers of microbiomes defined by the species that thrives with the amount of sunlight and rain that still reaches there.
Yeah, the soil could be a thing. Good call.
The floor, herb and brush layer, we could almost do before, obviously missing the density. But now we also have the option to add variation to the tree layer by dynamically spawning epiphytes like lianas, orchids, or bromeliads, attached to trunks and canopies of other assets.
Wonder if those vines are really ropes, or if they're static objects. I hope some of this stuff gets asked during the Q&A we're going to go over after this. We'll see.
Improved density is what will finally allow us to make convincing jungles. And the best part is, we don't even need a lot of different species to create what we refer to as a canvas of a biome. The idea being that we can vary what kind of forest you're in by adding or replacing the plants that visually stand out the most.
Yeah, we'll need to get lava.
To get us started on our certification, we made epiphytes like the Epiprenum and the bromeliad, including a potted version for your hab.
Bro, I have no clue what he just said. Can we try that again?
Now, to get us started on our certification, we made epiphytes like the Epiprenum and the bromeliad, including a potted version for your hab. Then obviously you need jungles for lianas for a jungle. And we also made the grias, which add character to the herb and tree layer.
Oh, are those just vines right there? Plant names,
for tall
okay.
Trees, we decided on a fairly generic rubber tree, as its different growth stages serve as a nice foundation for all height levels.
Dude, that thing's huge.
And that's pretty much it, what we need to make a pretty good base for jungle.
What's my prediction on Nyx and Castro release date?
Now, for a third
I'm gonna be honest with you. If things go well, I could see them coming in next year and the year after. But if things don't go well, I don't want to really talk about that. But that would be a ways back. If things don't go well, I think maybe we could see Nyx by the end of next year. But Castro would probably be a year plus after that.
Last use case. Let's pretend the data indicates regular rainfall and moderate temperatures. This climate would support a lot of different forests, but we also wanted to use this opportunity to explore extreme scale. And they're just really cool.
This reminds me of home. This is like right outside backyard for us. In fact, this is like where we were over the weekend, right? To go see the others, yeah. Guerneville? Guerneville. Yeah, what is it? It's interesting. Is the only thing that separates a jungle from a forest the moisture? I mean, obviously, like the moisture and maybe the sunlight they get. Is that it? Oh yeah, this seems like something they could have on Microtech. This might not even be something we have to wait as long to see. I do think that a biome like this would happen on Castra, on what's it called? Cascom. Which is Castra 2, I think. Yeah, they're doing their Star Wars shout-outs during this. We've seen 2 already.
Now, for this one, we first looked at the different redwood biomes on Earth and tried to analyze what the most defining species of them are. With this understanding, we then decided on the following plants to allow for a fairly universal redwood forest that will easily support variation across continents and planets. A fairly common family of species for the ground levels of all redwoods are ferns, in our case a sword fern.
Yeah, clearing out trees is going to be an interesting question. I hope they talk about that during Star Citizen Live.
We also made a huckleberry variant to provide some visual density for the shrub layer. To add some Jurassic vibes, we made tree ferns, as they can be found in New Zealand's redwood forests. The most important one, though, obviously sequoias. And they ended up being one of our most complex sets yet. As it turns out, they can grow to be fairly ridiculous in size.
God, dude.
It keeps going.
Trees. Oh my god. The trees got so big, if you look at the human over on the left side, they can't even, he disappears because the scale gets too far. Watch this guy here. He's gone. Holy crap, dude. The trees they get so big. If we can harvest wood, we're going to strip the absolute out of whatever planet these trees come on. Let me tell you. Humans.
Now, one thing our game's foliage is sorely missing is the ability to properly react to what's happening around it. The goal here is to unify all forces from all sorry for the horrible rhyme. All forces from all sources, wind, characters and creatures, ships, explosions, and whatever else, and have the vegetation behave accordingly. Now, as part of our tech improvements, we will be implementing a GPU-based simulation that's fit for our game scale. For now, we've set up the ferns with our existing CPU-based one to better visualize what it will feel like to walk amongst those giants. Also...
Okay, so I just need to take 1 second and apologize because I just realized that I'm not... Hold on, I need to switch YouTube and Twitch here so I can see the Twitch notifications. Because y'all on Twitch are hitting it up with the subs and I'm missing them. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much, guys, for the support today. Brigadier coming in at a whole year. You've been around longer than a year, though, right? Feels like it's been well past that we've been seeing y'all. Munstratus, thank you as well. 19 months. Thanks for the sub. The Poets, thank you for the 13 months, dude. 15 months overall. And Fox, appreciate you. GII Treehouse soon. Yes, absolutely. They actually did talk about trees a lot on SCL. I hope you are doing well. Hey, thanks for letting me know. We are going to be listening to that after this. So definitely that's good information. Can't wait to hear about it. Can we plant trees and make our own forests? I hope that's what they're talking about. I don't know if trees will be destructible. I imagine they should be, but who knows?
With the biomes on our planet, it's now being defined by where an individual object wants to
This is going to look amazing when there's fog in there. You got HDR going on. You got global illumination. Imagine the freaking... Oh, and they just have missions playing in these environments. That's all I need. What? Why are you shooting? What happened? Hey, come on. Azabon. Come on, man. Why'd you do this?
Now, before I get to disappear off stage, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody involved, especially my team in Frankfurt for doing such amazing work and being all around great people. And also to all of you guys. I really hope you have a fantastic CitizenCon. This concludes this phase of Genesis, so please welcome Ian to the stage so I can tell you all about the next one.
All right, so next part is points of interest.
Even more important is that when we make these structures, that they use and they follow the same rules as our biomes, such as the jungles and the swamps. But before we continue...
Dude, I wish they sponsored us for the unicorn. That'd be sick.
Let's first take stock as to where we are now. At the moment in the verse, we have these custom, beautifully made locations, such as Ghost Hollow, we've got our distribution centers, or even just some outposts. And these have all been handcrafted by our designers and artists to hit that benchmark. And they've been working directly on the planet. However, going forward, this doesn't really scale with how we want to go forward with the game. Server meshing is about to arrive, and we're going to have a way higher player count. So those 73 bunkers across Stanton just won't cut it. But in general, it's...
Yo, how many points of interest did they say that Star Citizen was going to have originally? 98? Thank you very much. I think they said 98 places you could land on planets with the original 100 star systems they wanted to do. 90 freaking 8. How many bunkers did he just say that we have in Stanton alone?
Is about to arrive, and we're going to have a way higher player count. So those 73 bunkers across...
73 bunkers. There are already more points of interest in Stanton alone than there were going to be in the entirety of the 100 systems in Star Citizen. How crazy. Like, how much this game changed when they introduced planets. Luna Maria, 9 months partnership or membership. Congratulations. Thank you for hanging out. Appreciate you. It's like almost in time with the real life baby, huh? Aw, to YouTube, baby. I'll have much more on each planet than barren planets with nothing on them. Well, yeah, definitely. Absolutely agree with you there. Omega level scope creep. It is, but it's really just like that one addition in reality. It's just the fact that they made Planet Tech a thing. That changed this game entirely.
Across Stanton just won't cut it. But in general, it's also pretty barren. There's not much for you to explore and find stuff out there.
Yeah.
So there's no exploration gameplay. You haven't really put your character to use for the way that you should.
True.
So this means we need to go bigger, which means we need to change our workflow. And with any workflow means we need to first establish a new benchmark. So with our new benchmark, we are ensuring quality and improve on our previous work and make it even better. And any location that you'll find needs to have its own unique personality and no repetition. We don't want you to find the same location twice. This also means that this is your...
Yeah, but is that ever really a possibility? You would just always find the same location twice. It's just a thing.
Exploration and your findings. So when you go out there and explore with your Carrack or with your Corsair, is that whatever you find, you can share with your orgs or with your friends. As for that density, if you fly down to the planet, we want you to find something, let's say, every 100 clicks. But also improve the mission experience. So when you stay more on the planet, you're more immersed, and you go from location to location. Just keep going. So going forward, we are modularizing all our existing locations and assets. And we're basically making a library of buildings and layouts that we'll be using to no longer work directly on the planet. The neat thing, all these modules and assets can be iterated upon and tested right in the editor for all the designers.
A lot of this sounds like things they were already doing. They were already creating these, what, Zap the Streamer? What the heck is that? What is that, Reese? What did you do? What is that? What is Zap the Streamer? It's what? Oh, I thought that was a thing somebody redeemed. I was like, what is Zap the Streamer? I don't want to... It's like, I don't want to deal with that. You didn't talk to me about that. Just introducing zapping. You can go zap a tomato before a tomato knows it's getting zapped. Creating these sorts of like libraries. It's standard stuff from what I've gathered, but it's also... Man, do I have... I must have videos for this stuff. It's like, this is stuff they've been doing for years. You're gonna have videos from past CitizenCons where they've shown... Just wait for it to populate a little bit, since it takes 10 minutes while it's waiting. We'll answer a question. Who do you think is changing the game industry more, CIG or Rockstar? I mean, Rockstar's always going to be the one changing it the most. There's so many eyes on Rockstar. If they do something, people take notice. CIG does something, it needs to be proven, and they haven't proven it yet. So maybe when Star Citizen and Squadron both come out and get one back-to-back games of the year, and the game ends up being the best game of the decade and everybody celebrates it, then maybe you could say they're changing the industry. But it's going to take a little while. Yeah, oh, did you start your streamathon tortures? Oh, okay. I thought that's why you guys were talking about that stuff on here. Yeah, you guys are going to get to pick some streamathon tortures real soon here for our next one coming up. So here's some of what they were talking about. They're just showing us that like the old library they had for Pyro assets looked like this. The new one looked like this. And then now we can see, you know, they're making more and more changes to it, and you could just go throughout the history that they have with the things they were making, and you can see where they were, you know, adding in concepting concepts, detailing and building more modules. So that's not like the most exciting and interesting part of this talk. We'll get there.
And artists, to ensure fun gameplay and interactive sandbox activity, and also make sure all the mission stuff is there. Basically, we're building a toolkit. So let's look at some of the...
I will say this, CIG and Rockstar are two companies that are both indeed doing things that are forward-facing in the games industry, and I'd say you can also look at Epic as being another who's doing similar stuff. but all three of those companies are doing things that seem to focus on fleshing out building interiors, which I do think that there are other games that are doing that. All three of those companies are coming up with their own proprietary version of server meshing. All three of those companies are focusing on building long-lasting, persistent online environments next to single-player counterparts. And they're all kind of doing so on the same timeline, which is interesting. So I think that there are conversations that would have Rockstar and CIG within them together. But Rockstar obviously has a lot more to its name to validate those things, and I think lend credence even to CIG that they're doing that stuff. Like the fact that Rockstar is doing those things makes CIG seem more legitimate, but I don't think CIG doing it has the same effect on Rockstar. I think CIG's got to prove that first, and they're right on the cusp of doing so. If they can release a 4.0 or 4.1 or 4.2 even that runs well and can get more than 400 players together in an instance, then they could be looking at getting a lot more respect across the industry. In addition, if they can get Squadron 42 out, but that is it's at least a year away, probably closer to 2. So we'll see.
The things that we need to keep in mind as we are making that toolkit. First and foremost, we've got our art style and branding. We've got things like Frontier for our settlements. We've got high-tech for the emergency shelters, but also utilitarian, like our bunkers and distribution centers. The richer the data, the richer these locations will be. Secondly, they all have a function. We've got mining for our mining outposts, farming for the farmsteads, or just places where people live. The function of the place will define the way the place looks as well, and its form. And last but not least, the people as well, the faction and their loadouts. We've got lawful people, like the new Citizens for Prosperity in Pyro, unlawful, such as Xenofred, and sometimes not even no one. And the place needs to look a bit, derelict. In different places, you'll
just
find
dead
different
bodies.
people. So, now that we've made our toolkit, and we've defined all this new stuff, let's start building thousands of locations. Yes, I said thousands. So, to avoid the same issue of working on directly in the planet, I'd like to introduce to you Starchitect.
Dude, they're just trolling us at this point. Second Life has had static server meshing for decades. Don't understand what's taking so long. Generally, it's the amount of data they're transferring that's taking is the most of the work. It's a lot of data, a lot of stuff going on that needs to be transmitted to a whole bunch of different places at virtually the same time. Paul said CIG developed the Intrepid specifically for you. Why would he say that? It's not going to help with the ever-present streamer privilege complaints. Maybe because it's Crusader and it's like the perfect ship size that I like. I really, really like ships around that size, but it's a little weird. Do you think 4.0 is like a linchpin for CIG? Kind of, yes. It's a big goal. They've been moving towards that for a long time. 6 years now, 7 years. If they're promising 42 and 26 and they should have the engine built by then. Engine's basically built. At that point, they're just... Like, I think the engine is built in the sense that it can deliver the bare minimum. Everything else coming afterward is more Star Citizen focused than what we have here. Yeah, they've definitely talked about it being an inside joke. They are, as the English call it, kicking the piss. You think all the game industry should take Rockstar and CIG as an example of the direction most AAA games must take? Oh, I think it's going to happen. I still like what Panic Switch said, that server meshing is just like next generation of loading screens, and everybody is always... Everybody's going to move in that direction over time. No, guys, it's kicking the piss. It's not taking.
What StarArchitect allows us to do is directly on a planetary scale scatter all these new libraries and modules and assets and no longer work directly on the planet. And it uses the same logical rule set as our emergent biomes. And it also gives us full control over the data that we set on these locations. So expect locations in places where they make sense. Let's kind of look at all this new Genesis.
Yeah, that's what you guys said about loot. Still waiting for loot to make more sense. It is GIF. Good call, Spore.
Data and all these new libraries and chuck it into StarArchitect and see what it gives us. As you can see, we're now able to make full-size locations, and they will look completely different based on where you'd find them. The layouts are controlled by the rules, and it will reflect its place in the verse. We've got farms, mining outposts, but even our older locations, such as the bunkers that you find.
One of the things that is cool about Pyro, and I don't know if it's running on this system, is as you fly around Pyro, every ground location you come across is like a central location. They'll talk a little bit about it here. And again, I don't know if what they talk about here, the clustering, is what they're doing in current Pyro. But if you fly to Pyro, when 4.0 hits PTU, and you go down to a ground location, you will find other ground locations scattered around it. 50 meters out, 200 meters out, 2 kilometers out. Like a solid 4 to 5 different central locations where things could happen or spawn that aren't just one place where you can land. And I think that's where they can spawn missions. That's where they can spawn NPCs you have to go find. It's where they can spawn pirates that are maybe having an incursion on the city. Like, there's a lot. Once you start spawning these kinds of points of interest on the planets and in areas, it's a lot of potential for the missions to fill in a lot more of the gaps.
On Stanton.
CIG's taking the piss with their star things naming. Gina Linetti had some harsh words for those who say GIF.
Let's look at an example and kind
She's
of use
hilarious.
a tool to really, make a location. We can define the rules, as I've mentioned a couple times by now. So for our mining outpost, it wants to be near a resource. We can specify what this resource needs to be. But we can also give suggestions where sometimes you'd find it here and sometimes you wouldn't. If the location has refineries, it might want to be near water to refine the resources.
Hey, do you think they're going to call their map tech for Star Citizen instead of building blocks? Do you think they'll call the tech behind their overall global map Star Atlas? Pretty good one. When is 4.0? My son was just born and I don't know what day it is. Don't worry, you're going to be okay. You're going to have time. In fact, your son will probably be able to help you out with your flying and shooting by the time 4.0 comes out. No, congratulations on your new baby, though. Don't worry, you've got weeks to go before I think 4.0 is going to be live.
Then second.
No. This is Res now. Yeah, just casually Luna gave birth.
We can define what buildings should be there. So obviously we need mining buildings, houses for people to live as well, and even power buildings that we can leverage with the resource network. StarArchitect will intelligently figure out where to place these and what needs to be at the location.
Right, because water is something that actually matters to the base building process too. And I imagine water will be something we can mine and sell at some point. Mine? Extract and sell? Man. Like, who would have known that our freaking satisfactory energies would in some way be replicated in Star Citizen at some point?
Next up, farms. Its rules, well, temperature. Not every plant can live in every temperature, but the same with soil type. Only certain plants can be in certain grounds. And then we can query the seed map to determine what plants you would find there. What are the harvestables?
Yeah, see, this is where I'm starting to be like, okay, how much of this is controllable by players?
As for the targets, again, farm buildings, obviously, power buildings, houses, but even animals, such as our beloved quasi-grazers.
Steak.
And last but not least, derelict ships. We've got these all over the place currently.
Just a dead body here.
Rules, well, they'd be close to anti-air because I would be shot down. But Even in harsh flight conditions, such as mountains or low visibility, you probably most commonly find them. Targets, well, crash ship parts, of course. Sometimes you'd find the full remains of a javelin, and the other time you might just find the nose of a starfarer laying around.
Yikes.
So, let's talk about coherency. Sure, we can scatter all these locations everywhere on the planet, and you'll find them in places they make sense, but we can do better. You don't just want to find an outpost completely on its own, right? We want to make sure it really feels like people have built their lives here. So
this is what I was talking about earlier.
Let's talk about some missing bits. We want to tell tighter stories, such as the people's lives, but also logical exploration. If I find one thing, I expect to find something similar or something else nearby. We also need more data control.
Like if I find a Starbucks, I expect to drive 2 blocks and find another Starbucks, you know? Hey, Thomas, thank you for the membership on YouTube. You're great. Much love, friend.
What defines one mining outpost being different from the other ones, aside from the harvestables? And also give the narrative developments. Make sure, people build near rivers, on mountains. They build near town halls. They build near distribution centers.
Okay, this is where it gets a little bit crazy, but stick with it. We'll figure out what this is. This is nuts, but we'll talk about it. Don't worry. We'll talk it out.
That bit of our benchmark, we make sure that locations are near each other and group them together. The effect it gives is a fully developed landscape with vistas and points of interest all over. And we group them together in what we like to call a cluster, like this one, that has 13 locations.
Okay, so we've kind of seen that in Pyro already with 4.0.
Let's talk about clusters. Clustering means generating locations near other locations. So, for example, if you find a distribution center, just like in the verse currently, I would find forward operating bases next to them. But if you go even further out, you'd find mining outposts to funnel those resources to the FOBs. Go out even further, you'd find caves around them, because that's where they might find some of the gems.
Okay, so this fits in really nicely with the first showing of Quantum, where they showed us kind of how they could sit in here and actually look at the
We're gonna add Laranite first.
look at the refineries, look at the caves, look at the places that would be sourcing these minerals, refining them, and moving them around. And you can see these are all locations that are being tracked by the economy system. This would be Quantum, the quantum simulation at the time, which is now being called StarSim. And it's a wonder how much of this still exists with StarSim and the way it connects into all these thousands of locations, as you'll see, per planet, possibly.
Power plant formula.
Jaybird, thank you for the membership on YouTube. You gonna change your name to Star Tomato?
Right now,
It's a little too on the nose, huh?
We're going to change that to 2. And what we're going to very quickly see here is that we're going to start getting some Laranite flowing to the Hurston factory so that the power plants can continue to be created. Yep, and that's that loop of guys right there. That's what they're taking. Now, one of the important things here is that let's go ahead and look at the Hurston aluminum. Bring Hurston factory aluminum.
Okay, that's enough of this. Anyways, you can kind of get the idea. The whole point of the economy is roping all of these things in. So it'll be interesting to see how commodities, NPCs, and vehicles are moving in between these locations, if they are supposedly linked into the economy, if they're going to try and simulate that or cheese that, show it off in some way, how it will work when you're looking at how many different locations can be in one area.
And then we can even specify the data on a cluster level. All of the factions that live at this whole cluster, any mining outpost, that would be the same people, but also what commodities they sell, to find on what resource you'd find. So let's look at an example of the clusters. We have our mining cluster. Again, we can define what rules we should have. Rules, well, near a resource, just like our mining outpost, but also it needs to be on a lawful planet. We can target on a planetary scale where they would need to be. They need protection. As for the targets, well, caves, mining outposts, but even trade posts. Let's go to the other side of the spectrum. Before I do so, I forgot data. We can, on a cluster level, specify, again, what mineral commodities, but also what harvestable types you'd find are in that region. Now let's look at the other side of the spectrum, an unlawful cluster. What rules? Well, they need to be far away from any other cluster, because they want to be isolated and do their evil deeds on their own. And also on an unlawful planet, such as somewhere in the Pyros system.
Like Hurston?
For the targets, outlaw outposts, crash ships, because they would shoot them down, and also ruins from just places they just completely overrun. The data on this one? You'd find specific loadouts, and they'll be using weapons that you wouldn't find any in other legal system. And these weapons will be sold at the shops in these regions. So, now that we have a cluster, let's go even bigger.
Okay, this is where it gets a little wild.
Just like our locations, we can put clusters near other clusters, and we group them together, ranging between 10 to 15 locations each. And we group this into what we call a sector. Like this one, that has about 120 locations. However, on a planetary scale, we can define how many sectors we should have, with each their own data and persona. And every single one of these locations is now ready for the mission system to hook up and give you gameplay, and for you to find a bunch of places on your own. And just on this side of the planet, can you guess the number? We've got about 3,042 locations.
See, that's nuts. But you got to find reasons for those locations to matter, too. I mean, not every location has reasons to matter. I'll give you that. You don't have to force it. But, like, a lot of those locations should have believable loot, maybe some kind of a data pad, or just something that tells a bit of a story, something to find missions that take place, something that makes them a reasonable interest for players.
This means as Architect, we're just able to, on a planetary scale, just define how many locations we need, what you'd find there, and to just give that full identity.
But this is one of those things that wouldn't be possible without server meshing.
And I won't just see you in the verse, but I'll see you in a denser verse. However, this was only the first phase of civilization. Let me introduce you to the stage, the person who will introduce life at these locations, Francesco Raccucci.
All right, so we're going to kind of pass through the AI part. This is mainly just looking at the way that AI functions throughout the game, which is just, some of this is interesting, but for the most part, we're more focused on the planet side of this and how planets are working. That being said, with all these points of interest, we do need to know how our NPCs going to be able to move around these locations, defend them, take part in them, be believable when you're around them.
Control, and some others like the day-night cycle that they can't. So in this video, we'll see two main elements. The graph on the top left and the two colorful cones. The graph on the left basically represents the current light level the NPC is in, and the current multiplier this light level generates to speed up or slow down the NPC perception and understanding. The two cones instead represents the primary and secondary FOV. The red color means that if you stand in that location, it will result in NPC reacting the slowest to you, and the green color instead represents the quickest response. So during the night, the NPC will have a hard time to understand and foresee and see things. But if they have flashlights on their helmets, they can turn it on, and this will impact their primary FOV, making still the peripheral vision a bit more uncertain. And as you see here, first of all, the NPC is patrolling with his domesticated friendly Copion. This is because he wants to exploit the vision, the night vision capabilities of the animal, and it's kind of our tier 0 pets. So we will now look at the cover system. That is the next dynamic things that I want to show you. So when we introduced planetary navigation mesh the first time, our goal was really to create a systems that would support and process the environment in a very dynamic way. Our planet.
You guys remember how long it took the planetary navigation mesh to actually start making a difference in the game? Like, the only way it made the difference even was at outposts. It wasn't like you were starting to find NPCs around the game and other locations. You would just find them. Nav mesh. You would just find them around their already predestined locations. Can't wait until they're just around outposts and not just like not just these places, right? Not a place that you go to fight, but a place that could be a place to fight or could be a place to do other things. But this is where they always were. This was the original navigation mesh getting generated. Just these were like first tests, first ways they figured out how to do it. This was their alpha implementation. Can we get NPCs to walk around on these new planets we've created? And how do we get it to be made procedurally on the spot per planet? Now we're seeing the way that they can start to interact with things moving around the planet as well. So we're seeing that iteration on the alpha implementation from the 3.x series of updates, now bringing it up to the 4.x series of updates level of quality, which is something a little more akin to a game.
It's just way too big to statically export them and process them, first of all. And then their regions only exist when somebody's there and the NPCs are there. So essentially, environment has its purpose only when life exists. Also, let's keep in mind that even if we could export dynamically and statically those planets, so processing dynamically all a static version of the planet, this would be, first of all, wasteful and on the memory side and time-consuming.
A look at how it actually works.
The dynamic generation of covers on the planet allows us to exploit all the elements of the environment.
4.0 is not coming this month. No.
NPC can now have a chance to fight with you hiding behind the available elements. Boulders, rock, walls, and are all useful elements right now. However, we don't have to limit ourselves to static geometries, but also vehicles can be used for cover. And as you can see, this is dynamically generating while the vehicle moves. So be careful where you park your Ursa, because now it can become a source of danger for you as well. Last but not least, these systems can be just used on all the different type of navigation mesh we have, so not on the planet, but also, for example, the interiors and everything you guys construct. Because obviously, you guys will build your own locations, but you don't really mark up stuff, or you don't want to decide that, because that's going to come automatically out of the system.
So what does that mean? We're turning into Fortnite then? Here's another real-time demo.
Cover locations are a good spot for NPC to be behind the cover. So what we see here is that with the introduction of Maelstrom last year, obviously we knew this would revolutionize how you guys are playing. And we did have to find a solution to handle all the destruction you get here. So you would destroy so much stuff in this world that we had to find a solution, right? So this is why we approach the cover generation navigation mesh as it is, because...
So this is basically just showing that they have destructible damage systems across all of their environments. And as they are destroyed, NPCs and AI will be able to track which parts do and do not exist. Ridiculously complex system in an environment like this, but definitely a system we've seen for years, dating all the way back to things like Battlefield Bad Company or Red Faction, I believe it was at the time.
There's just no way for us to predict anything that you're doing, and we want just Maelstrom to be another trigger for word evaluation. So as you see, this is all dynamically generating. And destroying anything just makes the war be reevaluated. So as you see here, we can have also lots of rules. So you can see that here. But when things break, first they invalidate, and then when they rest, for example, we can decide when is a good moment to regenerate, so that we also don't waste too much CPU cycles. The color that you see is mostly cover quality. So you see the light green is high cover, the dark green is low cover, and then we have the red that we introduced some time ago that is basically not really good cover, but if there is nothing better, well, it's better to be behind something than being, in open space. So let's just recap. What we want to do...
Okay, so that was a look at AI from this. We also have a little bit of a look at global illumination and what's been going on with that in the game. It's still a ways off, it sounds like. I think this is something that they're mainly working on for Squadron 42, but they're giving us updates on it every year as they work through it. Still seems like it's not anywhere near close to coming in, though.
It's flying. So let's see what the ray tracing looks like. Yeah, it's really noisy and horrible. We need to clean it up. So what we do is we let pixels share their data in space, and then also in time to clear up the final image. And then we let the game's normal anti-aliasing just kind of clean up the last stuff and carry us over the finish line. And that's how you make a chrome penguin.
I wish they would show us ray tracing examples inside of the jungle biome showcase, because that's where it would look really cool.
Lighting for new environments. This is also about pushing quality in areas that have already had all of that work done by the lighting team. We're freeing the artists up to light more naturally, allowing the time of day shifts to be embraced rather than fighting against them. And as I'm about to show, players and NPCs are going to reap the same benefits as well. So here we start adding natural areas of light and shade and warm and cool colors. These open areas benefit in the same way as the forest scene did, adding areas of shade and areas of open lighting. Like I mentioned, the time of day shifting leads to different ambience as the sun moves. Time of day shifting leads to different ambience as the sun moves.
Those shadows, though.
And this is the shot that I just liked.
Jeez. The stair... Oh, crap. Dude, what button is that? Oh my god, I press that button sometimes and it just ruins everything. The stairway during that that shot looked great.
And this is the shot that I just liked.
Yeah, I think it's the foliage there. It looks great. Number 0 on the number pad,
Finally, let's see how the new GI system can brighten up your character's day.
Wait, did she go from frowning to smiling?
And also their day as well. Whoever they are. Well, I promised you light and sound, but I don't actually know anything about sound. So here's the man who does, Graham Phillipson. Now.
Good afternoon, CitizenCon.
All right. This is about audio. We've talked about that a bit with Claudius. Now they're calling it Star Audio because, you know, CIG. I'm going to jump us forward to some of the interesting parts that they actually show us here.
The data in this way, we're not just creating a speed of sound. We are not just creating a Doppler effect. We are indeed, and I just spoiled my own line, creating a speed of sound effect. So, introducing systemic speed of sound to the game, I now have a couple of minutes of video, and we go through rapid fire, looking at some fantastic examples of what this brings to the game, starting with a spaceship pass by that is supported tonally by the systemic speed of sound.
I feel like they should stop showing tech we aren't going to have in our hands within the next year. Some people feel that way. Dude, sound effects flybys have been such a topic of discussion. We were talking about this during Around the Verse in like 2017, the sound of ships flying by. Kind of nuts how long all of this took to reach the level they wanted it to. But it's nice that it feels like they finally actually reached the level they wanted it to. It took both a while, but it also feels good that it actually seems like it's reaching a goal, you know, instead of just continuously feeling like the last 6 years. It feels like there's an actual milestone being achieved for a lot of this stuff.
Okay, sounds cool. What about weapon fire? So let's bring in a sniper and, unfortunately for the sensitive of heart, a Pico. We're going to hear this first from the perspective of both with no speed of sound effect. Okay, so that's, if you were at the Pico perspective
rude.
there, that's how you'd hear it in game right now. Let's hear it with speed of sound enabled, and this time we're just going to listen from Pico's perspective. So Pico's down before he even hears the shot.
Ouch.
But don't worry, he's not dead. Okay, let's finish him off. Now he's dead.
Just
And,
mean
that's
to the
voice
Pico,
of
man.
Pip's
Yeah, it's a
power-up.
marketing event for sure. It
I need
helps.
to get some proper placement in. So there's one more example for you. Now finally, oh, not finally, we have ship weapons, so listen to the fire rate as the ship approaches the camera here, giving you a bit of a sense of threat.
That didn't even seem like it was timed right. Oh, because there were other guns. That was what freaking guns firing? The turret underneath, huh?
Bit of a sense of threat.
Okay, I'm like, this doesn't look right.
It's not too easy to tell what's going on there, but you get an increase in fire rate.
Yeah, it isn't too easy.
Finally, the really cool stuff, explosions. So we can put a cinematic element, a shockwave element, and a delayed speed of sound effect.
How about the camera shake? Is that included?
And that's way too cool to do just once, so we're going to do it twice more from further distance. So again, cinematic effect first when you see it. Shockwave. And the explosion itself. This is all
It's going to be really cool if the shake is included with the shockwave.
Whenever you drop a Moab. One more.
It's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, this is going to make, for some people are going to make some very cool, like just close off a huge segment of a planet and then create their own inter-Star Citizen version of DayZ, and it's going to be amazing.
Sound simulation gives you a better sense of distance, it improves the sense of speed, and it supports those amazing cinematic moments.
All right, and then there was weather. This is no doubt going to be a topic of conversation on the Star Citizen Live, so we got to cover this before we head over there.
Forming naturally and changing shape, they dissipate as they glide on the atmosphere based on wind data, stratus and cumulus alike. Now we start seeing the new cloud shading model come into play. We are seeing enhanced occlusion beneath the cover, emphasizing the sunbeams how it interact with the clouds, and seeing the light shafts peer through the layers.
For the record, this is another thing that was talked about in 2017-ish and just kind of kept being sort of talked about and excited for, but never really saw any sort of milestone be met. And now again, we're seeing it coming up here with the latest work the Planet Tech team's been doing.
Now, as this is closing in, we can start to see the changes in visibility of the area. Light precipitation is starting. Previously, we authored static cloud shapes, but no longer. We didn't manually place a volume here. Its presence has been informed by Genesis data. Oh, and it's not just a cloud volume. It's a weather front. Now we're trying to see the wind picking up. Terrain and rocks are getting wet. Vegetation, grass, and the overall environment are responding to the weather. The system is changing the world around us. We can see puddles being formed dynamically in the dirt, properly responding to light, reflections, and rain droplets, making it getting really ominous.
The dynamic clouds are in Evo?
I can feel the danger. I think we should let this play out in the game.
Oh, the clouds we saw while we were playing were dynamic clouds, huh? I didn't pay enough attention to notice. They have some problems with the way they spawn in, I think. They look very gritty. This, I'm surprised they have working in a game environment. I do wonder how much of this is pre-prepped video, how much of this is faked effects. Like the cloth, or the blow it over cans, or the lightning striking the ship, or...
I'm getting out of this suit now. Powering up, flying out.
It's a good environment. This looks like a great place to run a mission of some sort. I think the only dangerous weather they've talked about are solar waves. But, you know, wind is going to be a pretty big detriment to ships. Very action movie, this part. Even that sound effect, like that kind of has the Doppler effect that they talked about with the sounds moving past you, but was that really the sound of the ship? Does the Aurora sound like that? Can we make the Aurora sound like that, please? I'd love more sounds like that. Sounds good. Solid presentation. It's good fun. So that's dynamic weather. That is the Planet Tech panel overall from CitizenCon. I thought we could use one more review of that. We never reviewed it while we did some of the other panels. So wanted to go over that real quick so that we can now transition over to Star Citizen Live and see what they said about their Q&A and answer some questions and probably elaborate a bit more on what we've just seen here, because there's a lot more that I would like to know about these things, and I'm sure you guys would too. It's not yet up on YouTube, so I'm going to hop over to the Twitch and see if I can get it pulled up over there. Let's see. Roberts Space Industries, I'm guessing, is their name over there, yeah? Star Citizen. I How do I find their official? Hey, there's us. Almost second row, baby. How do I find their official channel, though? Why doesn't it pop up when I search for the name? Okay, how about I do this? There we go. That works. All right. So here we are going to go ahead and check out basically their follow-up. Thank you everybody who came to watch us, watch this, and watch us and join us and all that stuff. If you're not here for these live ones, maybe consider it. They're good fun. See you in the next one. Sorry, that's me just ending the video for anybody who's watching the deep dive. Your biggest complaint about the Starlancer is that the interior is missing the color accents the way the Zeus has them. Zeus has a nice design. It really does. All right. Let's check out Star Citizen Live this week, going over... What is it? The Beyond New Worlds, whatever. It's a follow-up to the Star Engine panel with a Q&A, which is great because we just watched that panel.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Star Citizen Live. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee. And if you've never seen Star Citizen Live before, it's where we take about an hour at the end of our week and we invite our CIG developers here and we talk about all kinds of things. Sometimes we explore the process of their work. Sometimes we just get to know them a bit personally. And on shows like this, a Q&A show, we collect questions from you, the Star Citizen backer, and pose them directly to our developers. So on this week's show, we are following up to the Brave New Worlds Star Engine and Genesis presentation from this year's CitizenCon. So we have a few select members. We couldn't fit everybody on the show this week, but we have a few select members from the teams that contributed to that presentation on to answer your questions. So without further ado, let's get into it and meet who we got on the show this week. We'll start with Ali. Ali, tell everybody who you are, what you do for Star Citizen.
Ali Brown.
Hi, I'm Ali Brown. I'm Senior Director of Pixels and Planets. And that's it, really. I look after about 20 developers who are responsible for all things graphics, VFX, and planet related.
Did you get them to actually change the title to include pixels, or are you being fun?
No, that's what I've been using on Spectrum. It's a lot easier to say.
All right. Will, tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Hi, I'm Will. I'm a senior engine programmer on the Planet Tech team. I make planets and occasionally water and rivers and stuff, and it's great fun.
Okay.
Water guy is now
you have a nickname among
Swamp Guy,
don't you?
Oh, I certainly do. Water guy. Even though I should be Planet Guy, really.
Water Guy.
Swamp Guy.
Right, there it is in the chat.
Nobody wants to notice that.
Up next, Seb. Who are you and what do you do?
Hi, I'm Sebastian. I'm with the Planet Content team, and I make tools and planets and content for them, I guess.
Sebastian.
What's
Something like that.
what's the difference between tools and content?
Like Will and Ali, they make the magic sauce, and we make the ingredients that goes into that, and then we get planets out of it. Like, yeah, all the stones and all the plants and the data that drives the systems and all of that is from us. And yeah, we get the nice.
Like the engineers.
That works. I just wanted to hear you say magic sauce. And Graham, who are you and what do you do?
Hello, I'm Graham Phillipson. I'm Director of Audio Technology. So basically we take all these stunning visuals that all these guys create and we try to make them look even better by supporting them with audio.
Why does Graham look like an oil
You have to be real
painting?
careful about switching from Seb to Graham because it goes from dark to light. It's like,
Seb,
say something.
Is this a stealth mode type of thing?
Join me on the dark side. I don't know.
All right. So on the show this week, like we said, we're doing follow-up questions from the Brave New Worlds and Star Engine and Genesis presentation. We earlier this week we put up a thread on Spectrum, which is our bespoke communication platform available.
I asked a question on the thread. We'll see if it made it in.
Submit your questions, vote up which ones you wanted to see answered most. Then we let our four guests here loose on the thread, and they collected the ones that they were most capable of talking about now. As is always the case in game development, things that are much further out are a little too subject to change, so we do try to keep our questions and our conversation related to within the next year of content. So most of what we're talking about today
Man, I don't even
will be
remember.
related to the next year and possibly
Oh my God.
the year after
Why?
that, depending on.
Dude, is
specific.
Okay, I was gonna say, why does Twitch not just pause when I press spacebar? I don't remember what my question was, to be honest. Really wish I did, but I don't. We could probably go look it up real quick. We should look it up real quick just in case it does get asked. Do they put the thread in here? Why would they do that? They won't do that. Let's see, Spectrum. Maybe by some crazy chance, there's a notification on it. Holy crap, it got 62 freaking votes? Whoa! Wait, it got pretty high up here. The question was, what we saw during the panel was impressive, but could we hear more about how these tools have quantifiably made planet generation faster and higher quality? So I guess basically just like, how is all this being applied into making planets faster? Are you seeing progress when you're creating Nyx or Castra? Something like that. Did I spell what wrong? Still got the upvotes though. So, nobody cares about
keep that in
education.
mind when wondering why we're choosing certain questions over other questions, and let's get to it. Our first question, maybe this is for Seb, we'll see. It says, will Genesis allow you to create more alien-looking biomes and worlds using the Earth-like biomes as a base?
Yeah, I guess it's more like a content side question than like a tech limitation. Genesis never, like Planetech never really limited us in terms of what we can do. It's more like, yeah, what we do on the content side and making it realistic. Obviously, we've made a really nice progress already towards getting closer to what Earth and nature has to offer. It's always our primary target and goal, just so it's just because it's familiar and yeah, it's a really great reference point. And now we're really looking forward to doing more alien things and adding things that make it feel less familiar and just different, but without going into the uncanny valley kind of thing. So it's a balancing act, but we have a nice baseline now, and now we just go from there.
Give me those No Man's Sky planets.
More and better and alien and yeah.
Dude, they have amazing concept art for this game. Like, they don't even need to pretend like they don't know what planets we want because they're the ones who have made them. You just go to any of their pictures back here and you look through some of the stuff they've made. And they're not even crazy ideas. This is just a desert planet, but it looks cool. It's got cool, larger mega structures that just aren't just like rocks sitting on the plain. Or there's one picture I really like, particularly. It's like there's a giant canyon on this fractured looking planet. And I'm not sure if it's in this collection. But there's plenty that they could do with these planets. And I can't wait. I know they wanted to really get them to a place where they were able to create just basic planets. They wanted to get basic planets, like New Babbage is the poster child for what you would want to be able to create from Microtech. And they've gotten that done. So I think now is the time for them to start getting a little more creative with things like this, which are pretty cool things. Oh, you see that? You see how it just signed me in with using my eyeballs? That was the eye tracker. Okay, stop. Yeah, I don't think the picture that I'm looking for is here, though. But they're getting there. You can tell with some of the pyro planets, with details like this. Like they're clearly trying to get a little bit weirder with their designs. So we're getting there. Yeah, Castra's there too.
Do you think we'll eventually get to something that's just completely unrecognizable, something far more? I'm thinking like Felucia in Star Wars or something, where it's all a bunch of magentas and neon blues and stuff like that. Just a completely alien world. Is that something we're working towards?
It's definitely, we've tried this in the past. Actually, Hurston was meant to be like blue trees in the beginning.
Whoa,
and we
that's right.
Iterated onto it, and it ended up being more or less Africa now. But yeah, we'll definitely try that again and again until we get it right. But it has to feel good and feel believable and make for a nice experience to be in the place.
So they're going to get there at some point.
But it's definitely on the...
The Oso system has a jungle, which looks pretty crazy.
Okay. Next question. What we saw during the panel was impressive. I agree.
Holy crap, this is my question!
But could we hear more about how these tools have
What? That's sick.
quantifiably made planet generation faster and of higher quality?
Well, quantifiable is a weird word here because we're not done. So we haven't measured how long it takes to make a planet because we can't make a whole planet yet. But the design and the whole way that we've built this tech is with speed of iteration and quality in mind. We're already getting quantifiably better quality in areas, and we want to keep working until all of the areas are of a higher quality as well. But also, we can't kind of measure how quick all this will be until it's done, until all the supporting systems are done. So just because we can pump out a planet in a day doesn't necessarily mean we can work out everything else that makes that planet an interesting and unique location. That requires content from all sorts of other things, from narrative to level design to locations to lore. There's no point pumping out a million alien worlds that are all lifeless. They've got to have meaning, and that's kind of what we've done really nicely with Pyro, I think.
Yeah, you make a good point there. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Ali.
I was going to say, just to clarify, we're also not going to be pumping out a planet in a day or a million planets, though.
Certainly not.
I mean, it's as long as a piece of string, isn't it? You could pump out something in a day, whether it's of the, worthy of releasing in a day would be a very different question. Right.
Maybe I asked the question the wrong way, but I'm mainly wondering if you were going to make a planet like Pyro 4, I guess. One of the big things that they were telling us back when they went from Planet Tech V2 to V3 or V3 to V4 were the speed changes that they saw. So like it took them, I think 1 month, or no, 2 months with 3 people to make 3 moons or something like that. And then they went from that to being able to make like 2 moons in 2 weeks with 1 person. And they were able to kind of quantify how much their new tools were helping them make better things. But I guess at this point, it's less speed because they got fast enough. And now it's more, they're just trying to make things more better. And I guess since the system is not done enough for them to be putting everything together all with 1 click, they don't know how it would go. But I would then love to hear, what is the pipeline for like, if there are a bunch of things that you need to talk to, from the narrative people to the mission people, how is that pipeline shaping up to look like? What would be realistically expected? What is your guys' target, let's say, for wanting to make a planet that includes a landing zone in 5 years? Would that be like we want to do that in 1 year kind of thing? We want to do that in 1 year and stagger them so that there's a release every quarter? That's what interests me. Either way, glad they read my question. Appreciate that they answered it. Don't know if it's the answer I was looking for, but they answered it. The CIG is starting to run low on funds. Can they not sell the engine if they already haven't? Technically, I think it is in the realm of possibility, yes. Do I think they would sell the engine? No. Maybe they'd license it out. But I don't think they'd ever sell it. Yeah, I think they have no problem making planets. I think at this point, it's not about speed. It's about the quality and how it links into the other things, which makes complete sense. If they were making planets, if they were making moons within months back in 2019, how much could they have sped that up by now? Either way.
Right. No, Will, I really like your answer. Basically, there's what the tools can do, but there's still so many more aspects that go into creating a planet at the scale and fidelity of Star Citizen. So the Genesis tools and everything will streamline one aspect of that, but as you point out, there is still narrative, there is still creature creation, there's still all these other things that make a planet thrive. So we won't know how fast this improves the process until we crank out a couple more. As we go through Nyx and then Castra and then eventually Terra.
See, now that's kind of what I was hoping to hear. So I was thinking, when I was typing this question out, in my mind I was thinking, well, they clearly they're in pre-production with Castra. So they must be working on Planets of Nyx right now, or maybe just worked on Planets of Nyx. Maybe they were building these out with the Nyx, and I was hoping maybe they would say something like, oh yeah, we made so-and-so in Nyx in this amount of time. We went back through and updated, like we updated, remember back when they were doing this before, they would talk about how they updated the whole Stanton system in a corner? Wouldn't it be cool for them to be like, oh yeah, we finished out this planet and updated all of Stanton's planets in a couple of weeks with this system, and the quality level went up. But I guess they're not at that stage. And as Jared's kind of saying here, it sounds like they still got work to do on Nyx, but he might be misspeaking, so we won't read too much into that. But ultimately, that was kind of what I was looking for with this kind of question, was just talk about where things are going with the planets that they're working on right now. Who knows what that means for Nyx?
After that. So it's one of those things. I'm sure this is not the last time we're going to be talking about Genesis or planets and stuff like this. And as we learn these answers, we'll share more.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Thanks for answering the question, y'all.
Absolutely. Letting the hyperbole get a little ahead of me.
No, it's easy to get carried away. It's easy to get carried away.
The millions of planets. Anyways, pretty cool.
Anyway, it's we're in year 13. We try to be very responsible with how much we promise at this point. It's about doing the work and actually getting the work done now. One of the big elements of that Brave New Worlds presentation was weather, and I want to jump in. We have a lot of weather questions, so I want to jump into some of these weather questions here. Outside of thunderstorms, what other weather conditions or systems are we looking forward to implementing?
Who was asking this just earlier in the stream?
So I'll take that. So there's several that have been discussed internally. We haven't confirmed which ones we'll necessarily do first, but like the things that have been talked about that are potentially on the cards are things like sandstorms, obviously snow, and then potentially variations of those like acid rain, rather than the type of thunderstorm.
Dude, imagine if it snows. Imagine if it snowed and the snowed persisted on your spaceship. Is that too much? Have I gone too far?
Which were intended to be our first target. In terms of what we're excited by, I personally want the sandstorms. I think the tech is quite well geared.
It's a classic, the sandstorm.
Really good, and
Lair sandstorm.
We've got some recent films that type of give a lot of nice visual cues. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of that in the game personally.
Be real honest with me. How much does seeing a major film, something like what you're talking about, I will just say it's Dune and whatnot. How much does that ever sway our priorities? Like, oh no, we really want to do that and stuff like this. You can be honest.
I mean, on the tech side, not enormously, I don't think.
Okay.
We're slightly at the mercy of the creative directors to tell us where we should put our energies.
Guys, don't hate on my snow. Don't hate on my snow wants. We need the snow.
I guess, yeah. I mean, I've seen plenty of films that have
can snap a panel off of my Drake ship and go snowboarding with some wreckage, or sorry, not wreckage. Nice hull panels. Drake.
Recently they have sand and sandstorms in them and snow. I haven't seen an acid rain film recently. Maybe if there was one, it would jump to the top of the list, perhaps.
Of course, we do have planets like Hurston and several arid moons that would all benefit from that tech. So sandstorm specifically is something that would benefit quite a few different locations.
Yeah.
Stick with weather for a bit.
Daymar stays being the coolest moon just because of the way it looks. It's like a really nice color.
Is there a plan or a roadmap to improve cloud layer look from orbit? Grid effect, night shading, etc. There are bits of info from devs on Reddit, but we would love to hear more.
That's probably going to be my question then. So thankfully the list for what we need to do for clouds is finally starting to get shorter instead of longer. Well, that's nice. We have the fundamental framework.
Dude, that's great to hear. You guys remember being on the other side of cloud generation? Like back when clouds... Folks, this game used to be so underdeveloped that clouds are one of the most common topics we'd talk about. Like throughout a quarter, we would just have conversations about what cloud tech could mean for the game and how it might come into the game and all these different things, because we didn't even have the cloud nebulas in the game. It was all just blank space. And So it's really nice to hear that the list for that is getting shorter rather than longer for once, because that's felt like it's just been around forever.
But there's obviously still quite a few more things we want to try and do, like improvements to shaping, shading, performance as well, and make them all more stable. As far as the tiling issues are concerned, that's more of a content thing as opposed to a tech thing. As in, we have plans to make tools that will definitely improve that and just produce better looking cloud formations with less of those issues showing up. Obviously, it would be nice if we could throw unlimited resources at everything, but we're still making a game and we have similar limitations to what we can render on the screen as all other games. It's just that our scale is a bit worse or better, depending on who you ask. It makes it a bit more difficult, but we definitely have plans and know how to tackle those issues a bit better in the future. And it's just iterating and iterating and learning how to best make the data to drive the system in the best possible way.
Yeah, I know that cloud tech has been something a lot of folks here were waiting for a long time. And yeah, obviously what we have is
there you go.
Great, but like anything with Star Citizen, we're not one to generally rest on our laurels. So there will be a time where the development wheel turns its hands back to clouds, and we get more resources and more time to make that even better. Hey Graham, let's do an audio question.
Hello? Oh boy!
With Star Audio and the new Doppler effect,
or as a Brit might say it, Stadio.
Will we be able to hear the sonic boom in atmosphere? Also, we'll do 2 parts. Also, will ships like the Inferno be able to have a delayed brrr? Sorry, like the A10 Warthog, and will we be able
that was a
to
good recreation of the
sound? It's like
sound.
3 questions in one, guys. Okay, let's just do this one piece by piece. Will Star Audio and the new Doppler effect, will we be able to hear a sonic boom in the atmosphere?
Ultimately, yes. It's on our development plan, and it's not the most sort of difficult thing to do, but the more difficult things to do are the sort of fundamentals of making the Doppler sound good, making every sound that plays in the game work well with it. But we do have the data that we need in order to drive sonic boom. And as you saw at CitizenCon, we did some shockwave stuff on distant explosions.
I'm sorry, why does he look like he's from like a Sega Genesis game? Like even his hair looks like it is literally pixelated geometry from a game. I don't know what this filter is, because we've seen him before. So
that's pretty much the same concept. So
get this guy a camera?
We will get there, absolutely.
Like a phone?
All right, we'll do the second part of this question. Also, will ships like the Inferno be able to have a delayed brrr sound like the A10 Warthog?
Again, yes. It's all down to, I mean, it's kind of a content thing really to get the bird sound itself, but there's no reason why we can't then delay that and create the sort of horrific experience that you seem to be wanting.
I'm going to add a follow-up here. What are the challenges involved in making a delay seem intentional and not a mistake or a bug?
So they are those challenges are absolutely significant. One of the first things that came up when we first implemented a prototype of this was that when you walk away from somebody speaking and you start to see the lip sync go out, that's kind of like it's realistic, but people have seen movies often enough that they don't expect it. So we have to strike a balance between realism and the sort of the experience.
How fast would you have to move away from someone for the lip sync to change? Like you sprint away from them as you stare at their lips? You're like, is your talking changing?
People are a little more used to on screen. There's also the challenge of camera zoom. That's huge. So when the camera's zoomed in and the audio listener is actually significantly further away than it appears on screen, that causes problems. So we're having to overcome some of that as well. But yeah, there are plenty of challenges.
Okay. I think with there's a Starchitect question. Let's hit here.
Oh boy.
Would Genesis produce any actually large settlements on the scale of small towns or cities, or would that require more bespoke work?
So, yeah, it will create. It can create as big as we want, really, but the intention is not to create cities. We don't have hundreds of cities. We want our cities to feel very unique. We want extra care and love to go into them. So we're not currently planning to build anything as big as a city with it, and you'd probably need to adjust the algorithm a little bit, to the scale of content to make that work. But towns, definitely. Lots of small, medium-sized towns. Yeah, we certainly want.
Dude, and our scale is so off with this right now because we started with outposts, which were single buildings, and then we went with landing zones, which are massive cities that you can see from space. And yes, the planets are smaller than a normal planet, but get the idea, they're huge. So when we think towns, we're thinking of something that's relatively small, but could be considered a full city in another game. Like I'm thinking of there's a city in Starfield, and it's like the main area where for one of the factions, I don't even remember who it is, but it's where you run into the dude who's played by Elias, the Deus Ex dude. Gosh, I don't even remember what the heck the name of the city is, but it's like a small city used as like a sort of a landing zone in Starfield. But that's like the size of the settlements we could be getting in this game with just these side locations they're building. I'm not saying it's going to have more content. It's definitely not. Those were handmade, built as major hubs for a single player game. But it does, I think it still speaks to the scale that they're doing for this kind of stuff. And it's going to be cool to be able to just come across random towns and random cities and random star systems that have different factions and lore and things you can pick up and equip. Streaming from Mars. Bad camera. The Texas faction, exactly.
As many as them as design think fits the game. And lots. I'm actually personally looking forward to lots of really tiny things. I want like mini settlements. I want like the guy in his caravan and and all that. I want a bit more of that in the universe. But yeah, hopefully lots of small to medium-sized towns. And once they get a bit larger, I think that's where you really want to handcraft it and make sure that it has a strong narrative backing for it from design.
That makes sense. Why
is my cam video on 12 frames
during
per
the
second?
Presentation,
I don't know.
There was a lot of terms used to describe different footage. R&D phase, early footage, gray box. Folks know this, there's a nice set list of terms for like ship development, but the same system doesn't really equate to graphic stuff. And when the panel was ended, this person was conflicted over where their expectations should be set. Is all of this still R&D with clever renders, or is this technology at a stage where it could potentially be used to actually build a planet at this point?
That's a good question.
So, it's kind of a bit of a toss-up, really. We use the term vertical slice specifically, and that's something I'll kind of dive into a bit. We've kind of tried to do a bit of everything so that we can see the whole picture, and then kind of tweak our design from there and start finishing out each bit. And that means that yes, we could build a planet, but there's no way we could ship it. It's not performant enough, it's not varied enough, it doesn't check all of the boxes that we want. There'd be all sorts of problems with the tech that is working for the difficult bits but not working for the bits that mean that you can have 30 in a solar system and then 30 in another solar system and so on. One of the reasons we've approached it like this is because there's kind of such a fundamental change in the tech. Like the Genesis and the Planet Tech improvements are not just kind of changes to the output of the existing system. It is a fundamental kind of reshuffle and redistribution of work, which is largely because V4 kind of addressed the needs of planets, although the Planet Tech that we have kind of addressed the needs of planets as they were at 3.0. But nowadays there's a lot more requirements from that tech, whether it be kind of server meshing things, base building things, harvestables, persistence. So we've approached it from this vertical slice, which means yes, we can build a planet, but it's
another time to write down in your books when they make it sound like the 3.0 era of stuff was placeholder, just almost in its entirety. Just something to keep people busy playing the game, doing things, and testing while they actually built what was really going to build the game, which was the engine, the stuff that we're now starting to see with 4.0 and beyond.
It's not the standards we want. But we're now at that point where we take that, we can say, okay, well, here's what worked, here's what we need to redesign, here is what we know is great, we've solved some of the big tech problems. Now we're transitioning to more of a kind of milestone-based approach where we're saying, okay, well, now we're going to finish out GPU spawning, and now we're going to finish out the orbital look and so on, and we can start kind of taking chunks of tech and finishing it. And I think one of the really important things as well is that we're not aiming to release this as one big floodgate and suddenly everything is out and boom, you've got Genesis. It's going to be features coming online bit by bit. And one of the early bits of tech is actually already in the 4.0 streams that are going out to EPTU right now. The planetary rewrite of how we store and subdivide our planet and into patches and so on is already out there in the world and working. And that's kind of one of the benefits of having done this as a vertical slice. It means that we're starting to reap the benefits already. In terms of grey box, Seb, you can probably explain better what you meant by grey box in your sections. Sorry to drop you in.
Put him on the spot.
Sure. So like in our process, we usually have like white box, gray box, and then final and polish. For vegetation, doesn't really work that well, but like white boxes don't really represent vegetation assets super well. So we just make a very rough version of it. Also, we were asked fairly late into the process of making the videos to add those labels, and we might have been a bit sloppy. So like the swarms were definitely further along than the jungle, for example. Jungle definitely very much what we consider white box. Swarms and Redwoods a bit further along, with the swarms being the furthest. And yeah, it's all...
So it's just because the vegetation system runs on a different level than the rest of the game. Maybe because it's such an art-based asset, there's not as much that needs to go into the white box process. So white box, when it's vegetation, looks really good. Interesting that the jungle was at white box.
It's all coming together, and we are working through them. And a lot of what you've seen in white box is further along now and might be close to polished and final. And then we just need all systems, every other system, to make it into new planets and then release the
now, I wonder what could that mean, though? Could the forests end up on Microtech, and what would hold them back from doing so?
No, I don't know.
Seb, I love you. So basically, as Will was saying, it's not an all-in-one thing. It is Genesis within Star Engine is a collection of multiple different tools that are all being developed at different paces, with different necessities, with different requirements of them, with different dependencies of other stuff. So certain things will come online faster than other things, which is another reason why we can't quantify at this point just how much faster it'll make making planets until all that stuff comes online with everything else. But like I said, you will already start to see stuff in 4.0, which is the planetary stuff that you mentioned, and then with 4.1, 4.2, subsequent releases, as different elements come online and are ready for prime time, they'll be used to reconstruct certain elements of different planets and stuff to support other features like base building and stuff like that. So I know one of the things that often happens, because I've been doing this for more than a decade here now, is this idea that, anytime we say this is going back to the foundation or going back this is a rewrite of this and stuff like this, why do they keep remaking this and stuff like this? This is the normal process of game development. The difference part is that you don't normally see this exposed to anything else. It's one of the things that makes Star Citizen unique, being in a live service environment during the process of making the game. So it's not any different or anything unique to Star Citizen and Cloud Imperium games. It's other than you get to see it. So let's do a little asset distribution question. So with the sheer density of forests and similar biomes in Genesis, how might this interact with gameplay like landing ships or driving vehicles around?
Right. It's obviously for CitizenCon we made the biomes look their most intense, most dense. So we want to see what does it need to look like at its most densest, I guess. But obviously with the new system and everything being having ideal conditions and less ideal conditions, you will have varying distances. They could be over multiple kilometers and just like have the forest or like have something turn into a forest over a large distance, or it could be over some meters, so you get like clearings in the forests.
The
system
that's cool.
will support all of that. we've just only shown the most dense and the most purest version of each biome at CitizenCon. So that's why they look very dense. They're not very friendly for landing and everything, but it's going to be very unique and varied everywhere on the planet. So
of course, you could find places to land. Like, that would be crazy if you just couldn't land your ship anywhere in the game. Duke, thank you for the bits. Appreciate it. At least they've declared a proper goal in CitCon videos, and it looks good. Just hope they don't get sidetracked. Yeah, it's what we needed. We needed something to set as the long term. This is where they're headed.
Experiences depending on where you are.
We did see some areas where there were paths carved through like the jungle and the forest and stuff. So it is possible to create paths and stuff through this stuff.
Technically, yeah, but like they will also just happen naturally based on what data we put into the system and what how fertile the soil is in certain areas, and maybe that was a water washing it away, and then you have like a path cleared out from certain species of vegetation that don't want to grow there, or there's more. I'm not gonna say more rocks there, but there could be more rocks that don't allow for vegetation to grow, but stuff like that, and it's all gonna be more systemic and hopefully, and also more physically.
Just gonna jump over because it looks like they just uploaded it.
Hello, everybody.
Those for planet orbiting.
Right, it would be a little bit back.
Or thermal nature. So yeah.
Okay. So
I'll be varied.
All right. So if paths generate naturally and stuff throughout the system with the rule set and everything, well-traveled paths eventually begin to they start to get wider, and they start to form what some people might refer to as roads. Anything you want to?
Jared's like a built-in 10 for the chairman machine.
Tell us about roads.
It's like, keep expanding. Come on.
I don't.
I can
It's a nice place in Greece.
I can say regarding roads is that it's definitely something we want to do. A lot of the river tech when it was made made with kind of like roads in mind. In
and
terms
lava.
Of, there's a lot of similarities in terms of kind of like dynamically creating and destroying things as you approach it across a long spline. Because if you just load a mesh for a 100-kilometer road, that's obviously not going to work. But it takes some time and some investment into the tooling and into making the assets and getting design and so on. We want to approach it. We're not approaching it this second.
Yeah, just to add to that, we've got Will's done a lot of the ground.
Do you see that look on Jared's face?
Groundwork for that. So on the planet side, a lot of the work has been done, or wouldn't take much to go to take it further. There's not a huge difference on the planet side between a river and a road. Where the work remains is there's a bit of graphics work to do. Obviously, a road doesn't look like a river. We need whatever. Stylistically, we need to change there.
Yeah, they're going to have some like dynamic asphalt deformation system, and they're going to call it Star Ass or something, and it's going to be all about how roads can get wear and tear over time, and they'll build up elements from their surrounding biomes, so you'll have like dirty Star Ass versus cleanly laid Star Ass, and like CIG, man. They can't just implement roads. They've got to be star roads, and there's only one way to implement star roads, and it's over 4 years.
The whatever assets would be distributed at the side of the road would be slightly different to a river, but probably the biggest difference is we assume it would come from Starchitect. Like, we have to place all these locations on the planet, and then we have to figure out what would be the logical distribution of roads. There will need to be rule sets. Does this planet support roads? Is there areas of the planet that will and won't have roads? Maybe outlaw bases don't have roads. They don't maybe want to be signposted with a big motorway.
You gotta have those signpostings, dude.
Will. So it's that element that is the biggest part that's missing. And then obviously there'll be a bit of, once you have decided to connect to towns or locations, there's some code to figure out what is the best path to get between these two. Do I carve straight through every mountainside, or should I weave around them? Yeah, so there's a bit there. So on the planet side, we've kind of done it.
Toes.
Mostly on the tool side, we're deciding where the roads would go, and then a little bit of graphics to actually.
Yeah, the Star Citizen answer right there.
Literally.
You were hoping to hear about Star Citizen 1.0 long-term funding model. bed log in, log out details that were left out of Star Citizen 1.0. Agreed. Yeah, those two are things that we definitely missed out on. You want to see animal paths before roads? That would actually be really cool. If with all this monster hunting stuff, they had more natural mechanics that you could use to track down targets you were hunting, like paths or droppings and stuff like that. They could. I mean, let's not get crazy. Let's not build Monster Hunter into Star Citizen, but I mean, let's.
Since planets were first introduced in 3.0, roads have been the most pressing and recurring question anytime we talk about planet tech on either ISC or SCL. So it was.
The difference was a few years ago. It was like, well, where's the road going? You know,
right.
I'm driving out of Hurston, and where am I? Now we have a plan. There will be somewhere to go. So at least there's good reason for it now.
Fair enough. Fair enough. It's a good answer. I think folks will appreciate your candor on this. Let's jump back into weather. If it stops raining, will the puddles and ground remain wet for a while, or will they dry out immediately?
Yes, we've recently just changed that, so it does do what you would hope it would do. So it keeps track of the average amount of water in the ground, and it evaporates over time using a physically plausible model. Which we tweak to be kind of a cross between whether you want it realistic or what feels good for the gameplay.
Dude, are you kidding me? Is he talking about water evaporating off the ground?
For some period
What?
of time after the rain has passed. So all good there.
Cool. And
okay, sure.
I don't know if this is a weather question, but you know, somebody's thinking creatively. If you die in the water, for instance, in a swamp or whatever, do you float?
All we can recommend there is to take a really good friend with you to an ocean or a lake on Microtech, shoot them in the head and see what happens.
That's the best way to
You
test.
can do that right now.
Yeah.
Be my guest.
Okay. Just the views and opinions.
Y'all should specify you're talking about a game before YouTube automatically takes this off the internet.
Will Hain do not represent those of Cloud Imperium Games, Robert Space Industries, or its subsidiaries. Will we ever see, go back to asset distribution, will we ever see lakes, ponds, waterfalls, cliffs, or deep ravines?
We see lakes.
You already see lakes.
Yeah.
There's, 15 of them on Microtech and about 18 of them on Hurston. We want to take a look at things like smaller ponds that might form without kind of a necessary or a visible water source, but it's not kind of scheduled or road mapped. And along with waterfalls and deep ravines, it's stuff that we want to be able to do. And we are approaching a place where
I really would like for them to just, when these things come up, they should be like, that is not in 1.0. That's it. I don't want to hear any more. We want to do that, but it's not yet put in the plan. Like, does that mean, I don't know if that means it's supposed to be part of 1.0 or not. But I hope that they can start to just say, that is not in the 1.0 plan. That'll come sometime later. Yes, that is in the 1.0 plan. You know, give me that.
where we're in a better position to implement that, but they're not kind of like things that we have tasked out and planned out. Cliffs is something we are going to take a better look at as part of the current planned work for Genesis. People are always sharing that old canyon screenshot from Daymar, and that wasn't a viable way of doing that.
Hold on, we might actually have that. Let's see. Because, yeah, they showed us some canyons. Here we go. This is what they showed us back in the day that they were going to make for canyons in Daymar. And it never happened. It was real exciting. You know, it was exciting times. Hopefully, though, he is about to tell us why he is going to be able to do that. That's for a game director to say, not a dev. But it doesn't help to be able to hear that something may or may not happen. That's like, I understand that it might not be as good for a dev to be able to say that. But they're saying something. So this is just more of the canyon work. Oh, what the? Oh, that's something I recorded. A little more of this is just like them testing out what canyons would have looked like. Just the canyon tool. But what is he going to say about it?
That's across a planet, but we're hoping to come up with a more holistic approach for doing these cliffs. And we've already improved the cliff rendering in terms of what is shown on the terrain mesh itself, which is a big part of what's missing at the moment. So yes on that one, and the others are kind of like from my heart. I want to do them, but I have to wait for my heart to match the bullet points on paper.
Fair enough. Graham, this question's more a follow-up to the Star Audio presentation from last year, but we'll get into it. So Star Audio looked great. However, the audio engine in-game is already having a hard time. Weapon sounds stop randomly, and some audio simply doesn't work.
Yeah, the audio can make this game feel jank sometimes.
Is this technology a replacement of the entire audio engine, or simply an extension of the system we have?
Where is Claudius?
So it's absolutely been designed as a replacement.
Oh.
Some of those issues that you hear are due to some fairly naive culling of sounds, which obviously in Star Citizen you can't predict what's going to happen. We have a very limited budget for how many sounds we can play, how many ships we can play sounds for, things like that. And Star Audio it's absolutely planned to replace all of this stuff and improve all of these situations. So in the example of weapon fire cutting out, we have a much more intelligent budgeting system that will take into account the sort of importance of those sounds to the player at that moment, whether they're visible on screen, how close they are, how many other sounds in the sort of similar categories are playing. So we can definitely improve all those things with Star Audio. It's just a case of working through all our systems because we have audio systems hooked into pretty much everything the game can do. So we need to work through all those things one by one and get them all hooked into Star Audio. And eventually, sometime down the line, we won't have any of the old system.
Eventually.
I'm going to follow up here. Karasaki in the chat simply asks, audio ray tracing?
It's something we've talked about a little in the past, myself and Ali, but never really been able to dive into it deeply. But it's certainly something I'd like to revisit because, for things like reverbs, for, understanding what materials are present in a room, understanding the
does audio not already ray trace?
That's something that we really would need.
I thought that's how it works when you can hear it around a corner.
Yeah, but it's...
or rather, not hear it well around a corner. Doesn't it have to path trace and see what's in front of it?
Let's let the graphics do their side of ray tracing first, and then maybe we can talk after that.
Fair enough. This looks like maybe it's a Starchitect question. Any plans, near or far, to incorporate ancient alien ruins / bunkers into the dynamic planetary systems? This person thinks it would be cool to uncover lore and a possible storyline about ancient galactic civilizations.
That would be cool. Very sci-fi.
That would be so cool. And maybe we'll do it, but would be lame if we spoiled it now, right? Can't tell you the things you need to discover until you discover them.
Yeah. I will say the seeds for such things have already been planted with things like this here, for those who recognize what that is from CitizenCon year past. It's like that. So yes, we don't want to spoil that, but I think you'll be happy at some point.
It's like, is there a single space-based IP that doesn't have some sort of alien race with like ruins and stuff? I mean, there are plenty. You don't have to name them, or you could flood chat with the names if you'd like. I'd take down some notes, but it's like it's a thing. That's gonna happen. It has to happen. Maybe not an ancient race, but some kind of alien ruins and stuff. Raven One, thank you for the sub. Really hoping to hear more about SC login 1.0 login log out. Okay, that was the one that I had already read. Thank you for the sub with that message. Appreciate you for 7 months now. Great person. Good member of the garden.
Let's look back to, are there any plans for variable planet rotation speeds, obliquity, There's not a word we don't say every day. Obliquity, axial tilt, orbit, eccentricity, and atmosphere makeup, or lack thereof.
As far as our side goes for planet orbiting, it could be turned on, but it's going to make quantum traveling anywhere very difficult because the system isn't kind of set up for that as far as we know.
Dude, are they actually going to do orbiting planets?
In terms of more complex kind of orbit, most of those things are totally possible with the systems that we have in place. We would depend on design and law to explain maybe why we want some of those things. But yes, one of the things that we do need to do, of course, is axial tilt to match our seasons. The seasons are going to be coming, and actually we don't need to wait, unlike orbit, we don't need to wait for any other system to turn on seasons. We could turn on the seasons and just have it know where the tilt would be, even if we can't tilt or move the planets yet. So that is dependent on us finishing out that stuff and finishing out the content in terms of making it look right and so on. But yeah, very excited for this sort of stuff to come online when it does.
Okay. So I think planetary orbits are pretty much we're good to go. That's kind of a pretty big explanation of them. For anybody who doesn't know how seasons work, because somebody had asked, like, why does the orbit define seasons? Basically, it's because the tilt of the planet, like he was saying, tilts a certain way at a certain part of a planet's orbit. So, like, if your planet is tilted like this on the axis, but it goes around the axis like this, if you're halfway on the side of the planet, when it's tilted back like this, you're going to have shorter days and you're going to be colder because you're not as directly pointed at the sun. Whereas when you're tilted forward like this, you're going to have longer days and you're going to be hotter when you're tilted at the sun. Same goes for the southern half of the planet. It'll just be opposite because of the tilt. That's why, like, southern hemisphere has winter when we have summer, all that jazz. So basically what they're saying is, in order to get seasons, they could tilt the planets and start sending them around the star. But as of right now, all the systems that run in the background that would depend on that, like quantum travel, aren't made to work with that. Now, I think what they'd probably have to do is make it so that the quantum travel system can predict where the location of a planet will be and then send you on your way there. The interesting thing about that, though, is that you're not going to be able to have bottlenecks that pirates can continue to sit on in order to lock down trade lanes. Trade lanes are always going to be moving, so pirates would always have to be moving, which complicates that gameplay loop. It also changes the way that value of commodities happens. On some days, you could have some incredible prices because you've got one planet that harvests something that sells really well on the other planet right next to each other, and on other parts of the year, that could be a terrible deal to make because they're on the opposite sides of the system. Like, their orbits could define how the game plays over the course of time if the orbits are different from the real world, if they're different from each other. That's pretty nuts. And then I think this actually would introduce one of the most exciting things for me, which would be the possibility of irregular orbits. Imagine being able to have comets that could orbit your star once every 6 months. And I think this is like one of the best possible things for exploration gameplay. You get the planets orbiting the star once every 6 months. So for about 4 to 3 of the months that of that period of time, the comet is visitable. However far out distance it is, there's no invisible wall stopping you from visiting it. So let's say every time it leaves the system, it refreshes itself with like super valuable resources and stuff. As it comes back into the system, everybody tries their shot at getting out to it as early as possible, but only the best explorers can make it out there. So they get the best resources, they clear up, maybe they build a base on there to make sure they have a spot where they can continue to harvest, all that kind of stuff, right? And as it gets closer and closer and closer to the central system, more and more people get there, and it becomes just like a natural part of the game in that system. A trade point, a place where there are bases, where people are running hauling missions, trade lanes, kind of like how Delamar was in Stanton originally. And then, just goes back out the other way. But that would be like that's an amazing chance for a dynamic event. These events they've always wanted to seem super dynamic and systemic and coming out of nowhere. That's a great opportunity for them. That, as well as just doing that with planets too in their seasons. And here's the only other bit we ever learned about seasons. We looked at it earlier, but this was in CitizenCon 2021. And they were just looking at how seasons could affect plants. And I was like, maybe we'll do that. That would be pretty cool. I am surprised, though, to see them doing, getting this into the game or getting it ready so quickly. Yeah, it'd have to be a big comet. I mean, comets tend to be pretty freaking large, but it'd have to be a big comet. But I do think that is a really, really cool opportunity for the game if they get orbits working. And that's my spiel for exploration based on orbits. Please, CIG, please, let's take advantage of that. That'd be fun. What would stop being from just following the comet? You wouldn't have resources for months out there. You'd basically be cut off from the rest of the video game. It'd be too far to quantum jump, so you'd have to be able to plant your own stuff, but the comet would be freezing cold because it's nowhere near the star. So you're not going to be able to really farm and make food. People would just die out. That could be a pretty cool type of gameplay. See who can last the longest on a comet that's left the star system. Oh my gosh, that would actually be really freaking cool. Like some long-term esport. You got to battle it out on a comet that's hurtling away from the star system over the course of 2 months. Who can last the longest, bro? Too many fun ideas when it comes to this game.
So on, but yeah, very excited for this sort of stuff to come online when it does.
Okay. That you bring up a good point that sometimes
guy's name on screen is Will.
Capable, you can't
Will Haynes.
Turn it on or enable it because of other game-related systems that will break or aren't quite ready for it, like the quantum travel system. That's a good. I'm glad you pointed that out. Will planets such as Microtech get snowfall and snow accumulation?
So we'll be 5.
Snow.
Obviously, we need to revisit.
See, I get my snow.
Some of the data that every planet is based on, and the goal is more physical plausibility, and this is definitely a big part of what we want to do. Will has talked about the separation of different layers, and snow being the last one. Obviously, it makes sense to drive this purely by climate and temperature being the most important one for that. So yeah, there will be a technical requirement to do that, and obviously we really want to do it as well, just for more consistent, more believable planets, and it's going to be good, I think.
Is this one of those things? Oh, go ahead.
No.
Oh, I thought.
Will we be able to build snowmen?
That's for physics, probably. And graphics, not me. So, who knows?
Always kicking the can.
I mean, I'd probably
be like, sorry, that's for the props team, not for me. Sorry.
I'd be looking for leaving a snow trail and yellow snow before we get to snowman.
That's fair.
Is this one of those things where snowfall might come before snow accumulation, or is this one of those things where it's a 1-1, you don't get one without the other?
So we, like I mentioned earlier, we don't have we haven't decided for certain yet with creative directors which weather systems will come first, and obviously the more we work on weather, the less we work on some of the other aspects of Genesis. So some of that is still to be decided. But if snow was to become a thing, then it would be easier for us to release snow in places where it already has snow on the ground. That would be a much easier thing for us to deliver. So that would be a potential shorter route for us. To make it snow in somewhere that has never had snow, there's a few extra technical challenges there. You know, we have to build up the snow, and then we have to make sure the assets that are there, all the trees and rocks.
There is snowfall, but it's like
so there might be asset
kind of
touch-ups to be done. So it's a bit
canned
more
animation kind of
for
thing.
that side of it, and then to have the snow evaporate over time, melt. So snowing on Microtech is more likely to happen before snowing at the poles of a more temperate planet.
Okay. With
Kicking
the
the piss.
implementation of Genesis and
Now you're
the next
getting a Nomad.
iteration of Planet Tech and stuff, will planets like Microtech be adapted to have biomes located in the correct places based on latitude? For example, frozen biomes around the poles and temperate forest around the equators.
I mean, do they
Yeah,
not
I
do
think
that?
it's basically the same answer I had on the last question as well. Like, it needs to be. Like, we need to make it all more plausible, and the data will be.
Gotta tilt those planets.
It'll just happen.
Fair enough.
And we kind of need for the weather. We need the data to be more physically correct so that the weather can match. We can't have it snowy in somewhere that's 20 degrees Celsius. So it comes hand in hand. The weather will be based on physically based stuff, but then Seb has to go and make sure the planets are following them physically based rules. With V5 it'll be automatic with the new planets, but when it comes to the older planets, we'll have to touch them up to make sure that they are plausible.
Okay.
Maybe some bits get more snowy or less snowy as that happens to make sure it all makes sense physically.
Okay. Will the mud? Well, okay. Let's look at two-part question here. Will rains create mud?
Yes.
Okay.
One
They're gonna
of
make
the
mud.
design points for the new planet shader is that the different soil categories.
Am I gonna slip and fall on my ass because of mud? I don't want to replay middle school, please. Thank you.
Like the kind of visual appearance of soil will kind of have a matching set of what they look like in different amounts of humidity. So you'll have a cracked clay and a cracked soil and a whatever, and then you'll have a damp and then a saturated and then like an oversaturated. I don't know, I've just pulled those categories out, but something like that. So that's kind of based from the beginning that we want to incorporate that into our data. And then we will, so some of it will come from static data, like being next to a river or just being in an area where there is higher water availability. But then kind of transitioning these based on local rainfall is definitely part of the plan, yeah.
Okay.
Yikes,
the second
man.
part of this question is whether that mud that's created from the rain will affect the term they use is crossability, but basically uneven terrain or difficult. In D&D, we'd call it. Will it make difficult terrain for people on foot or in wheeled vehicles?
Yeah, that's. Am I gonna slip?
We can report the surface type back to physics, and then other systems can change their behavior based on that.
No
I
way.
don't want to speak for all the other systems.
They're gonna put on freaking custom slipping in the mud animations while I'm running.
That would have to then come and change their behavior. So the physics on the wheeled vehicles and the actors and so on. But all of these systems already do respect different surface types. Audio is another important one, of course, as well, because soil and mud sound very different. So by changing the surface type at some sort of threshold, we hope to be able to provide the information needed for this to the systems that would then change those behaviors.
God, that's gonna be nuts.
This is one of the.
And they will do that too because they want this. Clearly, they want this to be a fully featured engine. Whether that's because they want to license it out at some point or because they want to make other games with this. Clearly, this engine's being built to not just cover the needs of Star Citizen, but of anything that would need to be made. And so I have no doubt that they will do that with the ground effects when it comes to traversal. Hopefully, after Star Citizen 1.0 gets the stuff that it needs, but I have no more doubt that the things that could make this game engine better in ways that don't seem obvious to us now will happen.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of what I'm trying to say here. Only Star Citizens, and I mean this as a compliment, would hope that rain would create mud that would create difficulty traversing and accomplishing their goals. It's one of the shared interests between us and our fan base here, and I love that. I love that question. It's basically what I'm trying to get at, and I hope it's something that materializes. Do clouds move in one direction across the planet, or are they actually dynamic and move in all directions, forming cool patterns from space?
Do they swirl? That's what they want to know.
Right.
Do they swirl?
Conceptually, obviously, we've looked at a lot of papers and weather simulations and how clouds more form and move on Earth. And conceptually, they will follow the general planet's rotation from orbit and from a larger picture point of view. They will be deviating from this direction, though, just so you get like what you get in nature. Obviously, we might not be able to do the full thing, like running a full weather simulation on the servers might be problematic for performance, to say the least. So we're trying to make it as efficient as possible, but also look the best. So they will be able to deviate from the primary direction they're moving in. How far we can push this, we don't fully know yet. We're still exploring what we can do with the tech, how we can improve it a little bit further, and what we can do with the data to make it do more with the same amount, ideally. And but yeah, we definitely plan to have very varying weather patterns moving all over the planet in believable ways based on the data.
Make hurricanes, please.
Providing.
Just go all the way. Just make naturally forming hurricanes out at sea. That'd be cool.
Okay. I want to throw two questions from the chat in here. The first is from Jesus Pug, first time chatter. Can we cut down trees?
We've been asking.
What, as in today?
No, as in the spec for what we're working towards.
We're incorporating some kind of technology decisions into our tech at the moment that will allow us to better kind of support individual behaviors on assets, which is a long-winded way of saying that there's a lot of stuff that goes into being able to scatter 20 million trees across a planet and then being able to point at one of them and say, I want you to be chopped down. But we're bearing it in mind. That's how I'm going to leave that.
No, that's a no.
Good answer. I knew I could trust you to answer to throw the curveball. The other question is
it's a no and be surprised and nicely surprised if it happens.
The chat right now, and that's what any of this means for ArcCorp.
Yes. Oh my God, yes. Tell us about ArcCorp, please.
ArcCorp is not built like any of our other planets. Everybody knows that. It's not built with the Planetech system. Does weather come to ArcCorp? Do any of these features come to ArcCorp? And can any of these features be used to improve or further develop ArcCorp in the future? Or is that something entirely different?
I mean, ArcCorp does use the Planetech. I mean, there's a lot of special cases on ArcCorp. It's shaded differently. We type of abuse the system a little bit to get the results we want on ArcCorp, to say the least. It probably will be a similar story. We're not planning on spending a year making bespoke ArcCorp tech. But there is parts of the new system that we're hoping will allow improvements on ArcCorp. Obviously, things about, the amount of light that will gather underneath a tree and whether a fern can grow isn't really relevant. But there are many other parts that are relevant with like the density, with the way we position things. We type of intentionally kind of randomize. We have a grid pattern for where we're going to put things, but then we randomize it. We could kind of just remove that randomization and get an actual grid pattern more naturally. And yeah, a lot of these rule sets, they're built for nature, but some of them, again, they're more powerful this time, so we might be able to abuse them again to get something nice out of ArcCorp. But that type of, we're not focusing on that at the moment. We're making sure that we can deliver every other planet, and we're hopeful that we will then be able to do something nice with ArcCorp at the end as a result, because all planets must eventually use this tech. There is no option long term. They all must use it. It's just a question of how much we have to change to make it suitable for ArcCorp. And which we won't fully know yet until we give it a bash.
Yeah. ArcCorp is an unnatural abomination.
It'll definitely get weather, though. That much I think we can say. It'll definitely get weather.
Okay.
It's actually surprising because I would think they'd say something about, see, I want ArcCorp to look like this, man. I mean, it does look like this, but I think it's still missing this scale, the difference in scale with the buildings. Because the cities themselves, the planets themselves are so small, it's harder to get this vertical scale. But I hope they can. There's also another picture I've been looking for here of ArcCorp. and it shows how ArcCorp is actually not all city. They have green areas. Here we go. So ArcCorp is supposed to be a place that also has green areas. It's supposed to have water. It's supposed to have some foliage, something that creates, you know, the weather that takes place on the planet. I don't know if they're ever going to do that. They've talked about doing that in the past. They've also talked about needing to redo the buildings in ArcCorp to allow for building interiors and the initiative that they're doing there. But they didn't talk about that today either, so I don't know why they didn't mention these things, but those are things that I thought would have been more along the lines of, yeah, we need to go back and redo ArcCorp, but it sounds like they're actually pretty hesitant about that, so I think it could be longer than we were thinking until they go back around to it. Hopefully before 1.0.
Will Genesis allow for more realistic placement of mining nodes, being placed on the areas of exposed rock layers?
It does look like a park, but it's still a green area at least.
Cliffs, instead of being randomly scattered on the planet's surface.
That's definitely in the cards for sure.
In the cards.
I don't know if we really wants to talk about the whole entity thing, but conceptually, yeah, we'll definitely be able to have them. Right now they're like tied to the biome they're in, but in the future we can be more specific and spawn them on cliff sides or where the rocks fall down at the base of a cliff, and then you will find them there and stuff like that. It's definitely possible, I think.
I mean, yeah, I think we want to treat a harvestable like any other asset, in that if it's a mining rock, we want to spawn it according to parameters that we would spawn a regular rock. We kind of don't care whether it's here's a game entity that you can mine versus here's a static piece of geo. We kind of want to do them with the same rules, and it'd be the same for because you get those the revenant trees that you go and revenants are bushes. Then there's the heart of the forest tree or whatever. We want to scatter them just like any other vegetation, based on the same data and the same rules. So if you're asking, is it going to be more realistic? Then I would say yes. I think Seb also alluded to the new kind of entity management spawning-y stuff. I don't think that's going to help the specificity of the locations, but it's definitely going to help the density of these things. And I won't elaborate into that right now because that's
I wouldn't take that to mean that any mineral is going to spawn where you would expect that specific mineral to spawn. I mean, they could do that, but I would also assume it's going to be more generalized than that, just to save our expectations, you know?
No.
The managed entity system is a very techie, boring subject that you can't cover without a TED talk.
Well, now we know what we're doing early next year. I'll come by your desk on Monday and talk to you about it.
Yay.
Graham, so you mentioned that Star
Sega
Audio
Genesis
is intended
Graham.
as a complete replacement of the current audio engine system. We've been talking about Star Audio for a little while. We introduced it, I believe, last year at CitizenCon.
Claudius.
What are the blockers remaining? What's between us now and the eventual implementation and swap out of the system?
Well, some of the biggest blockers are just the sheer volume of systems that we have running, and the design of Star Audio is that we take all the features that are embedded in those game systems and make them all part of the engine, and we're chipping away at that. So that's the biggest blocker for it to be covering everything, is that we need to have every single possible audio feature covered within the engine, whereas right now there's a lot of game code, a lot of very specific code for certain situations that's been designed for those specific situations. So it's all about making everything as generic as possible and making all these features available to whichever game system wants to use them. So it's the biggest blocker is the sheer volume of work involved. That's the only way I can put it.
Gosh. Tale as old as Star Citizen.
Will large ships be able to compress trees and plants to land in the dense forests? We talked about the paths and everything, but what if we just try to force it?
We can't cut trees down, but can we crush them into the ground?
This is kind of linked to what I said before with chopping down trees. There's kind of a few complications that come here. If you think about, I want to knock over a tree with my ship, that sounds like a simple behavior, but there's all the gameplay stuff about like how you would go around and chop a tree and the kind of design behavior from that. And so none of that's done, so we need to wait for that. And then from our end, there's kind of 3 core bits that we need to worry about. There's promotion, which is taking our very kind of highly optimized tree asset that renders in a particular way and is spawned by a particular system, and replacing that with something that we can interact with and uniquely address and tell what to do. There's the managed entity system, which I alluded to, which is essentially about making spawning of entities server meshing friendly and persistent. And then there's persistence itself, which is kind of like, okay, well, you've crushed a forest with your Idris. There were, 700 trees under there that we now need to remember have not done something. And actually just creating 700 entities and chucking them in the entity graph is not an efficient way of going about that. So we need to make complex decisions, like if a tree becomes fallen over next to your base, you probably care about that tree. But if you knock over 500 trees on your way to New Babbage, we could probably come up with something different to record that there are fallen trees in this area, but not 700 unique entities for each fallen tree. So there's a whole ton of work that goes into stuff like this, and it's not even really kind of planned for or guaranteed at this point. All I'll say is that we want our system to be able to support more complex behavior and start to approach these problems. I don't know if Ali or Seb want to give anything more on that, but absolutely do not take this as any.
Who knew trees were such a big deal?
Sort of guaranteeing, just that, yeah.
So I guess the only thing to add is, there's the problems of, like Will said, about keeping track of how many trees. If you press your Idris 10,000 times and now there's 1 million trees that are being chopped down, we have some serious issues to type of figure out there. And there's obviously Seb staying quiet, but obviously if we want to chop trees, Seb has a lot of work to do. Unless they're just going to evaporate in a puff of smoke, that makes life easier. But yeah, if they it depends on the level of destruction.
Just let us beam the trees.
That also affects the entity graph stuff. It's whether we just remember 700 trees have gone away, which is 700 bits of data, or whether we have to remember that 700 trees have been carved up into 75 pieces and scattered around the universe. Then that's obviously more for the entity graph.
Start dropping trees from orbit.
People will be quite angry at us if we push it too hard. So some things to we're type of on the path. We know there's a momentum heat or a black hole dragging us in that direction, so we are paving the way for these kinds of decisions, because at the moment it's just not plausible, but we're paving the way so that some decisions can be made as to the specific, how many trees can they be chopped, or they just blow up or fall over, and there's lots to be figured out in specific. It's paving the way for this kind of thing.
It's a slippery slope from being.
I love how much of this episode we're spending on trees. Just trees, man.
Able to chop down one tree with an axe or a chainsaw, to crashing your javelin shallowly like the Enterprise saucer section in Generations, and just taking out a 3-kilometer wide swath of trees in Microtech, which is exactly what people will attempt to do. So
in another game, you might say that the trees grow back in 10 minutes, but that's kind of not our game, is it? So
what's up,
we have
Fate?
to deal with the type of level of realism that we're aiming for.
Easy to do, barely an inconvenience.
It's a little bit harder. If we're going to gamify this, we could make it a lot simpler.
Get that reference.
Strake is in the chat is like, he almost said 3 mile. I'm trying. I've been living in the UK for 2.5 years now. I'm trying really hard to convert.
Man, 2.5 years already?
It's not easy. In how much detail will planetary data be used to shape weather patterns, and what weather are you looking to simulate?
All right. So since we need to address the whole general V4 data versus V5 data anyway for the planets, and the clouds are just part of that process anyway. Like they will come out of the same tool set basically. Our aim is to have a default weather behavior for a planet. If you generate a generic planet, it will just create ideally the weather patterns for cold air moving underneath warm air, pushing it up, causing cumulus clouds to form into cumulonimbus clouds.
Cumulonimbus.
Hate that word, but, and everything in between, ideally. And then also having warm air moving over cold air.
Seriously, we getting meteorology in Star Citizen now?
Stratus family of clouds to form. And that's like our default behavior we want to do for every planet if we need to. And on top of that, there will obviously be different things. As in, you have like a very planet with a specific need for a certain weather pattern, or like very different or alien planets with alien clouds, whatever that means. We don't know yet.
Alien and clouds.
And we just try to do that as well. But yeah, the idea is that we can cover as many different cloud types as possible with the resources we have, and yeah, then vary it based on planets, individual planet needs. So yeah.
Why do you hate cumulonimbus?
It's a very hard word to say. They're really great. I love the clouds.
Beautiful
themselves.
clouds.
They're really good, and they're the only ones that make lightning. They're really cool. So
very tall boys.
Some exceptions, but
all right. Well, we're in the end game here. Last weather question: any plans for nature's wrath beyond lightning strikes? We're gonna get as crazy as tornadoes, hurricanes, typhoons. How crazy are we aiming to go with this?
I mean, hurricanes and typhoons are the same thing, just different names depending on where you are on the planet. It's just like very strong winds, and from orbit you have this giant circling weather front moving around. We might not be able to do it like that from orbit. We'll definitely be able to turn up the knob a little bit on what our weather looks like compared to what you've seen at CitizenCon. Obviously, it needs a lot of work from different departments to make this all a coherent experience. Tornadoes, it's not really a weather cloud thing. Like, they move at a very different rate than the clouds will be able to move. So it would be more on VFX and graphics, and I don't want to commit them to do anything that they
tornadoes too, of course,
anytime soon.
There's floods. Come on, where are the floods? Wildfires? Like, dude, give us everything. I just want to live the terror that I already live in real life, of course.
But yeah, definitely we will have certain
earthquakes,
cyclones on them. If they will move the way they do in nature, we'll need to see how far we can push the system, or if they will be a little bit less. But yeah, I don't know yet. We'll see. We're still learning. We're still working with the data and the tools, and expanding them, exploring them, making better data, and you can expect a lot of iteration for the weather over the next few months and maybe years.
Ali, any thoughts on Aurora Borealis?
That one does actually come up a bit.
Turkey does have big earthquakes, yeah.
We would kind of like that one. All of the stuff in the atmosphere ends up being quite difficult, though, especially when they interact with each other. So the clouds and the atmosphere are in the same volume, and then the rain is covering the same, and then ground fog. These things are all overlapping and quite problematic. For the Aurora Borealis, I take it. I mean, I've not looked at the science, but I assume it's always above the cloud layer, isn't it? And if it is, that at least simplifies the problem a bit for the rendering side. We've certainly made accidents that look like Aurora before in VFX and graphics, usually bugs, sometimes intentional from artists. Yeah, that's one I'd quite like, personally, and it's possibly easier than some of the others. But it's also quite separate. You know, we have to intentionally decide we're going to stop doing this. Aurora is what we want to do, and we haven't quite had the creative direction telling us, like, do that now. Maybe we want Auroras for this next release, but it's certainly plausible. That came from up above.
Okay. Last two questions. Here's an oldie but a goodie. Will planets ever be scaled up more than their 1/8 size to real life for more realism, or as it is, the mountains feel small?
Okay. Now that they're talking about their points of interest being much larger than in number than they originally talked about, I would not be opposed to the planets getting bigger. Originally, I was like, that puts content too far away from one another. You don't want to be flying around the planet for a while, but with quantum boost and with points of interest everywhere, maybe you could scale it up, but I wonder how much that would mess with the rest of the game, the speeds they have us flying at, all that kind of stuff.
Write a check, Will.
Right. I think we'd like that because we feel the small too, especially as we introduce more and more advanced atmosphere. It kind of it breaks our nice illusion that our planets are full scale, which I hope all of you continue to believe, because I certainly do in my heart. The thing about bigger planets is it stretches the complications with precision more, which we're hoping to be able to do away with, but that's one problem. Obviously, we need high resolution textures. At the moment, if we have a global texture and it's, say, 2K, that gives us a certain number of kilometers per pixel. And obviously, we have local data too. But if we make a planet have twice the surface area, then suddenly we have half as much resolution for the same kind of budget. So we need to consider those decisions and consider how the tech can deal with that.
Oh, this is going to be, I'm going to make a video out of this.
You also get kind of gameplay problems with that as well. If I make a real life-size planet, we have fast ships, but like suddenly getting from one place to another takes 10 times as long. And it's not necessarily good for gameplay to have that. So it's a convoluted question.
But it takes twice as long. Like that changes in my opinion, because they have added so much more to planets than ever used to be in the conversation. I get what he's saying though, and it's nice to hear finally the different reasons why this sort of thing is not as simple as just, oh, we'll just expand to the size of all the planets. Because I think everybody agrees there are trade-offs, there are pros and cons to keeping planets whatever size they are. I think right now the planets are 1/8 size, and then the distances between them and the moons are 1/6, or it's vice versa, something like that. And these are some reasonable explanations as to why they can't necessarily have them be as large. But with all the different things they're adding to planets now, I feel like, maybe we could figure something out.
We appreciate the reason that people are asking, though. We feel the same. But also there's a certain amount of the why question, which I guess you can ask for a lot of our features, which is what we have works, what we have is great. Should we invest more time in making it bigger? Is that a good use of our time versus going and doing Rivers 2 or finishing out something else sooner?
Roads.
Whatever. Roads. So if you put up a poll that said roads versus bigger planets, I bet roads would win. So yeah.
I'd
Take
probably
that
add
with
the 8 times is probably, like I say, it probably pushes all of them aspects too much. Too low res, it's too much memory, it's too much of a knock-on for the gameplay. A smaller increment would be more appealing, I think. Like a doubling or something like that, because just being able to double the scale of our mountains would be nice, and double the scale of our global features, mountain ranges. Would be nice. So
yeah,
something 2 or 3x, would be more chill. But 8x, it's pushing a few too many areas at the same time, probably. For, yeah. And then the other thing we talked about, we didn't mention.
But that's the thing. It's like it doesn't have to be all the way up to 1-to-1. It could absolutely be just a small change, just to give us more variability in the environments we're seeing, in the atmosphere we get, the way that the clouds are working, the way that cities are visible from orbit. I think there's a lot of things that could benefit from the planet's changing scale.
There's content density. We have to fill it with stuff as well.
You got Starchitect.
Starchitect hopefully helps fill that gap a bit, but we just don't want to, if the current game, we don't want to put things miles apart. But as we start to see the products of Starchitect, we might be able to see, okay, things are feeling too crammed and claustrophobic. Maybe we do need a bit more space, and we'll try and explore that. But yeah, probably 8x is probably pushing it, I think.
Hey, that at least makes it sound like it's possible that they get larger. So we'll see what they do. I would assume that they're going to stay the same size, but it would be cool if they, went up a couple times, a couple levels in size, complicate them things.
And the last question, rock distribution. Ask about rock distribution. You mentioned a little bit of it, CitizenCon and these things. I know not all these systems come online at the same time, stuff like this. A lot of the desire for roads, I think, besides the aesthetic stuff, comes from the incredibly disastrous and detrimental nature of rock distribution on ground vehicles. Is there some hope for us in the future of thinning these out a bit and making the ground vehicle experience, even as we wait for roads, a little more pleasant for people?
I mean, we can finally do denser and better vegetation, so maybe we can do less rocks now. But we do love rocks. I know, but kidding aside, with the new local data, the distribution will be different. It will not be as even anymore. The big rocks will be more out of the way to some extent, and it will be more obvious where they are, and you will most likely be able to drive much further without being constantly thrown around.
Please.
Yeah, it's not like we won't ever have places that do have a lot of rocks, but hopefully the most common scenario might be I'm driving down a valley. There's a nice clear path down here, but up on the sides, there's like, you can see the big piles of rocks coming down each side, but you can kind of make out a clear path, and it's not like just a random roll of the dice whether a rock like immediately in front of you. So we're hoping it feels better, but until we type of finish a planet, drive along it at speed, we'll have to see. But yeah, we're hoping.
So when are you guys going to finish a planet? Like that's
much more realistic.
That's what I'm trying to know.
Cool. And if it doesn't, I know where you all sit.
I'm in Germany. I'm sorry. for a while at least. So
I can get to Germany. I can find you. All right, folks, thank you so much.
For a while. Are they trying to get Germany folks to move to Manchester too?
In the chat, and if I can speak for the YouTube viewers later, we'll really appreciate your candor and information on a variety of topics related to Star Engine and Genesis. So thank you so much. Graham, thank you for hanging out with us. I know we only had a couple questions for you, but you stuck it out like a champ, and your answers were really great. I think folks are really looking forward to Star Audio and the wealth of improvements it's going to make for the Star Citizen experience. That's it for this week's show. If you haven't, check out yesterday's ISC. That was with Benoit and members of the UK networking team about all the different tech preview tests that are going on right now as we head to 4.0 and that release. Next week is IAE and something a bit different. There won't be an SCL next Friday. There will be something different in the place of ISC and SCL next week on Friday.
Guessing it's going to be a short video released in the lore that's kind of like that old Mercury Star Runner we got, maybe, hopefully, I hope. Fingers crossed. Those are pretty cool.
So be sure you check that out. For SCL, I'm Jared. That's Pete on the dials. That's Lauren on the buttons. And that was Ali, Will, Seb, and Graham with the great answers. So thanks for watching. I'm Jared.
Yeah,
Take
very
care,
well
everybody.
might be Jax. Good call.
We'll see you next week on whatever that different thing is. See you then.
All right, folks. And that's it from me. Hope y'all got something from that watch through. I've got a couple of different things and videos that came up there that I'm probably going to publish separately, because I think there were some good points that people should know from in there. Some decent information though, specifically this stuff about where they are in the process of applying these things was a pretty good one, but I'll probably have to go back through and watch this again. Either way, keep an eye out, folks, for more content coming out. 4.0 is looking like it's going to the PTU soon, which means I need to get on it with writing that video. I did not realize that video was going to need to happen so quickly. We got podcasts going on, streams going on, everything's going on at schedule. So I'll see you guys again right here tomorrow for some org gameplay. We'll be doing some good old fun stuff. Unless 4.0 goes to PTU, then I might have to jump in there. Either way, always appreciate you guys being here. You're wonderful people. Love you very much. You make these streams a whole lot more fun than they could be. And that's why I like to do them almost every day. I'm going to send you all over to Meyer. Looks like he's getting in on some Star Citizen action. And I'll hopefully see you all here tomorrow. I'll see you here tomorrow. I'll see you on Monday. I'll see you next Wednesday. I got videos planned. I got a supporter exclusive plan for anybody who is a Twitch, YouTube, or Patreon supporter. Make sure to check out on Discord later today. I'm releasing a new exclusive to you guys about... It's a surprise, but you'll see it soon. Either way, folks, thanks again for being here. Much love to you. Do something you love. Eat something you love. Give somebody a hug of love. Treat yourselves well. You're good people. You deserve it. And I will see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.